Good morning, everyone. This is our Tuesday, July 16th regular Board of County Commissioners work session. And first on the agenda is an update regarding the library renovation. And Kathy Chandler, our librarian, will present.
Hi, thanks, George. And I have with me Jack Wheeler, who's the head of facilities, project manager, for the county. And he's going to help update us on what's going on with the work on the parking garage, because he's been meeting regularly with the city staff to coordinate efforts there. So the reason that we're here today is to talk about the election that we weren't able to pass, where we asked for a tax increase in order to fund a 20-year bond issuance of bonds to do a renovation of the library building and the addition onto the library's easement on the plaza. And we were also asked a second question where we were asking for a revenue stream of $141,000 a year in order to help us make sure that we had money on hand to heat, cool, clean, and do a capital replacement schedule for the added infrastructure that we were attempting to add to the library. So anyway, as you know, those election measures failed, and what the library board and staff have been trying to do in the past several months is to look at the results of those elections and the things that people said during the meetings leading up to them, the letters to the editor, different comments in the public outreach sessions that led to the defeat of those ballot measures for the library. And one of our main takeaways was the fact we were asking for tax increases, and it was a poor economy, and people obviously did not want increased taxes for the library. Another takeaway was that a lot of people didn't like the idea of the intrusion onto the extra 16 feet of the parking garage for that canopy that would have supported the weight of the library. And we've talked, to various other people who have had other takeaways, one of which was the idea that the library did not need this added space. But we have been working on this for many years, since 2008, with a library planning consultant and with architects, and going through these public meetings. And we believe that the needs of the library still remain, even though we weren't able to pass those ballot measures. So the things that we were trying to accomplish was to get a new children's library, to reposition the teen library in the building, and to get meeting rooms for the public, one major meeting room that would be able to be used outside of the library's hours. And then several small study rooms where people could meet to work collaboratively, which is a new expected service for libraries to provide, where people, for instance, in our town, there's over 80 teams of English in Action volunteers, many of whom meet at the library with their pupil who's trying to learn English as a second language, and we just don't have any small spaces for those people to get together and be able to talk instead of trying to learn English at a whisper. The other big change in libraries that I don't think we were able to convey to the voters was the fact that libraries are configured much differently nowadays than they were when we built our building. That stacks are just nowhere near as high as what we have in our building, and that libraries try to welcome people into the collection to encourage them to browse, and with our stacks being as close together as they are, it's just an out-of-date format. Another thing that some people were saying during the campaign was the fact that libraries, that they were implying that libraries aren't needed anymore. And our use has been similar to what's been experienced in libraries across the country, that while funding has remained the same or dropped in a lot of libraries, the use has kind of skyrocketed ever since the recession hit, that people aren't able to go out in many instances and just buy everything they need to load onto their Kindle, that they need to rely on the library collections that are already in place to fill their information needs. So this slide shows, it's a comparison of the number of cars in the parking garage each year, which I thought sort of demonstrated the economy in the Pickens County, compared with the number of materials that are checked out from our library. And our number of materials we circulated last year was up 16% over circulation the year before.
Can I ask you a question on that slide?
Yeah, sure.
I'm just curious, with borrowed items, what goes into that? Is that in-house visits only? Or is if you're downloading a book on the library website from home, is that included in that?
That, I did not include the downloads in here, which went from a little bit over 1,000 the year before to about 5,000 last year, because I was just trying to show the physical materials.
These are physical items that are leave the library.
Right. Then another thing that I've been talking about at many of our meetings is the new service that the library started to provide with the other Marmot libraries beginning in 2007, where people can put their own holds on materials, and as opposed to interlibrary loan, which we still do, but that's a much more laborious way to request items. And this has just exploded with the number of items that are transported across the state by a courier. And this just shows the activity in our library, things that we're sending out to other libraries that are coming in for our patrons, things that are just going back and forth on the courier, because we tell people they can return their materials at any library regardless of where they borrowed them from. And so that last year was about 28,000, now it's well over 30,000. Just a number of materials that are handled by the staff and put on reserve shelves, so the patrons don't have to come in themselves to look for those items. So just to review what we were trying to accomplish, there's quite a few issues that were identified with the lower level of the library, that it's a very convoluted layout, very broken up space, and we've expressed our concern many times for the security in the children's area, the way things are right now, with it being just a few steps off of Mill Street, and with it serving as a hallway for people entering the library to come through that room. It takes up a lot of the space in the children's room. It also makes our children's librarians check out a big proportion of the items that go out of the library, as opposed to just checking out the children's room materials. They're checking out all of the non-print that's currently housed in the lower level in the music library. So that's all the DVDs and books on CD, and the music collection all goes through that children's room desk. There isn't any space for us to expand the children's room, even though we would like to make that collection more browsable, being in lower browsing bins that you find in newer libraries. The music collection that we have is sort of the gem of the library, and it's hidden from view, hard for the public to find. A lot of people can come to the library and not even know that that was there. And then one of our big things that we were trying to accomplish was to get a meeting room that we could use outside of the regular library hours, that we could let the public use. And so the only way to rearrange things within the current footprint would be to move that meeting room to where the children's room is now, forcing the children's room into an even less pleasing location in the building, and we would have pillars in the meeting room, and not the best option. on the main level, we didn't have a good connection to the plaza, which I'm going to talk about in a bit further. And also the situation with the views that we have in the library I'll address later when I'm talking about the relationship between the library and the parking garage and kind of what happened during the construction of the two buildings. It's one of our big problems is that the nonfiction collection is on the main floor of the library, and that was our most heavily used part of the collection when we built the library 22 years ago. But with the advent of the internet, everything is flipped, and the fiction, children's, and non-print collections now are the most heavily used parts of the collection. And so we have the most heavily used parts of the collection in the hardest to get to parts of the building. On the mezzanine, again, we have the fiction upstairs when it should be on the main floor. It's out of room with really crammed shelves. The shelving doesn't meet accessibility standards, and we have the young adult area up on the mezzanine and a lot of acoustical issues there where it's just natural for kids when they're getting out of school at the end of the day to not be as quiet as one might hope sometimes. So anyway, we want to be able to be welcoming to those kids when they come in. And I just, would pause to note that at the beginning of the summer, we had Dee Harold, who's a young adult librarian from Grand Junction, come over to do some book talks with our teens, and there were 38 kids that came to that session. Just the topic was what's hot to read over the summer. So I think, the explosion in publishing for teens is certainly appreciated in this community, and we've got a lot of good readers there, and we really would like to make them feel very welcome at the library. And here I was saying before we started that I had some trouble with the slide. I think I had too much information on it. So anyway, this is a little bit dull, but I'm going to turn it over to Jack, who's going to talk a little bit about why we feel that it's a good idea to move ahead with this project at this time.
Hi everybody, I'm Jack Wheeler, Pickett County's Facilities Project Manager. The timing on the project that we're looking to meet is driven by the Galena Plaza project that's scheduled to break ground spring of 2014. So to do that, we would publish the RFP in August of this year, try and get a design team on board as well as contractors so that we're moving forward in a design build capabilities to get the most accurate estimates as we move forward and fluid with the design. The design and the estimate would be done winter 2013 and 14 so that we could coordinate the structure with the Galena Plaza project spring 2014. Ongoing library construction to be completed summer 2015.
This was just that while we're doing that, our plan is to have a lot of public process, open houses, to reach out to the public, to try to inform them of what we're trying to accomplish and to get their input to make sure that we're in step with what their desires are for the library.
And in the process that we talked about in the previous slide, there'd be points, each one of those, the RFP, we'd be back with information to the board and decision points as we move forward with a design team after the RFPs come in. Same thing with the design and the estimation. We'd be back with a conceptual to inform the board of what's going on. At some point by the spring of 2014, we'd be moving forward into a construction contract. We'd be back in here informing the board where we're at with decision points.
Jack, what would the initial RFP be for or about?
I'm not 100% certain exactly how we're going to package it, but our goal is to get a design build team on board as soon as possible. Whether that first RFP goes out just for architectural and design services or design build with contractor on board as well, we're not sure. If not packaged together, they'll be packaged separately and closely at the same time.
So, Jack, the city is definitely going ahead next year. They've got it budgeted, and they're going out with an RFP as well.
My conversations are, their goals are to proceed with construction in 2014.
And then is there an opportunity for us to work in partnership with them? It's any part of that? Because in the parking garage, some of that work is going to be, for the library, is going to be structural. And I don't know if the city has to do any structural work as well.
Yeah, there's the benefits for coordinating with the plaza construction right now. It's financial, logistics, operational, there's community impact, maintaining seamless warranty, minimize risk. And what that means is there's financial benefits we tear up the plaza one time, we coordinate our efforts so that we minimize and optimize the finances. The logistic and operational community impact we only impact the area once. And it's not just community, it's civic. There's law enforcement that only gets impacted once, RAFTA only gets impacted once, the buses. So the community impact and logistical operational it's a big deal. Maintaining seamless warranty and minimizing risk. To move forward at the same time that they expose the parking garage, we can minimize our risk by working closely with them, trying to coordinate so that we're using the same contractors for waterproofing and things like that, so that we can make sure there's no warranty issues in the future, there's no finger pointing. So there's some great benefits, I think, not just financial, but managing the risk as well.
And what were the other benefits you'd mentioned? You went through, I'm writing that
There's financial benefits, logistical benefits, operational benefits, and when I say operational, that's the operations of the community and civic operations around it, and then just the overall community impact.
Okay. Thank you.
Kathy, can you summarize, to refresh my memory and also for the listening audience, the decision-making process moving forward with this? Because the library's got its own board, they make recommendations, we oversee the budget. And now we're proposing doing this with funds that have already been raised, so there isn't a taxpayer ballot issue on this. But moving forward over the next year and a half, where does the decision-making process lie, and where are the key decisions? How does the decision-making tree lay out?
Okay, I'm just going to pop back to this previous slide because I think it relates to your question. One decision would be made today. The library board sets policy for the library, hires and fires the librarian, and does this sort of long-range planning thing, but we have to come to the Board of County Commissioners, who is the ultimate authority as far as our funding is concerned. So you folks have the authority to move money into our budget. And, so what we were hoping to ask for today, if you folks agree that it seems logical to move forward with this, is to tell us that it's all right for us to go out for a request for proposals. And then once the architects have done this work, where they look at the pricing of the project, and if they conclude, as we believe they would, that it's possible for us to accomplish our goals with the amount of money that we have on hand and have enough left over to keep that extra part of the building running all right, then we would come back to you folks and say, now can we move ahead and put more money in the budget? I left out a step. So first we have to ask if we can put out the RFP. Then when we get those bids back in, or proposals, then we have to come and ask you folks to move money into the budget to pay for that design work. Then when they get done with the design work, if it looks like we can afford it, then we would have to come back and ask you folks again if we could then have the money to actually do the project. So there's several points where you can give us the go-ahead or not.
And let me just clarify, and I think I understand, but tell me if I'm wrong. When you say move money into the budget, it's moving from the library capital fund to the library operational budget or building budget.
Exactly.
It's not from our general fund, it's not from other funds. We're not moving money towards the library. the library is, it's already in the balance sheet of the library on a larger sense. We're just moving it from one place to another there. So it's not coming from our general fund at all.
It's kind of like a 2013
Yeah.
supplemental.
And I'm saying this mostly for the public, that this is not taking away from something that we would be funding
Right.
from our general fund. This is money that's allocated to be used for the library at some time.
Yes.
And most of which has been donated for the library use.
Yes. The basis of this money is all donated funds that we received back in 1997. Part of it came from Doris Denker's estate, and the other was from Alice Price. And that money was then invested for us by the county, and on a conservative basis, and that grew to the point, it started out at $3.9 million. And then in 2000 and in 2001, we used $2 million from that fund to fund the internal expansion of the library, because when the library was built in 1991, it was built with a mezzanine and a big storage area in the lower level that weren't finished off, and with the intention of that being used for future growth. And then the ultimate grow out of the building was the easement that we were granted that had been in the works since 1988, a couple of years before the library was actually built. And so that's the second expansion that we're talking about right now. And just as an aside, the taxpayers, the library's been in existence for 75 years this fall, and it started out in the Wheeler Opera House, which the city let them use that for free, and then moved to a new location in 1964, I think, on Main Street, and that building was built half with donated funds and the other half was from a federal grant. And then when we built this building, we did fundraising, and anyway, the amount of taxpayers' dollars that is tied up in the library building, actual construction, is about $3.3 million. So they've had a pretty good bargain as far as library facilities are concerned because of the generosity of some donors. Anyway, let's...
Thank you. Can I just follow up one more thing with that? Because I think one of the most important decision-making process, and I think it's important to know for the public that this is going to come back to the board, which is for us to look at what I'm presuming would be presented to us in a 10 to 20-year operational plan to make sure that there are enough funds left over to operate the library, and there's enough contingency built into the bids that come back for building, because, for instance, we just saw an underpass go from, I forgot what it was, 3 million to 5 million?
3.5 to 5, something like that.
So that there's enough contingency built in that we're not going to overextend ourselves halfway through a project to know, and then not be able to operate the library without putting funds in from elsewhere. I think that's part of the decision-making process.
And that's one wonderful piece of news that we got was that a donor would like to help with the community meeting room, and that is a big piece of the puzzle that's allowing us to consider moving forward.
One last thing, Kathy, because you kind of got back into the history of taxpayer money in the library. What is the amount in the fund that you have now for the construction donated?
In the middle of June, we had $6,070,000. When we started this process, we had about $5.3 million, but
We expended some.
well, no, we haven't really spent from that fund, because we've been reserving that because it can be invested more aggressively than taxpayer money, which has to be in treasury bills, where you're only getting a fraction of a percent. So we're keeping it conservatively invested, but it is more at risk than a T-bill, for instance. But because of that, it grew a lot last year. We started this process with $5.3 million, which we were going to put towards the building, and now it's at $6,070,000, or it was in the middle of June. We may have lost some. Then if we add to that a donation of a pledge of $1.3 million, then that I think will set us up in a way that we would have the money to do the new construction and the renovation of the building at a much more scaled back version than we had initially proposed, and leave money so that we can spin off revenue to continue with operations on a bigger building.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so one question that was asked was, what happens if we continue to wait? Would it be possible to hope that our investments would grow at a rate that we could get back close to what we were initially proposing? And so we've talked to the finance office and looking at what's happening with the inflation in the construction industry versus what we could get conservatively from Wall Street. We don't think that we can't outgrow the increasing cost of construction, so that's another reason why we feel it's prudent to try to do this project now. So this is a little bit about the new approach that we're looking at, because we're basically talking about cutting the price of the project in half. And I wanted to just go back with a little bit of history about the relationship between the parking garage, the construction of the parking garage, and the construction of the library building. When the parking garage was constructed, many of you remember, the parking garage hit an underground stream, and when that happened, the parking garage plans just started to levitate. So the library was supposed to be at the same level as the parking garage when you went out the east door of the library, but because the parking garage had to be raised, there's several feet difference between the two structures, and that forced our east windows in the library building that would have been a nice connection to the plaza basically got turned into, garden level windows, as they call them in town here, kind of basement windows. They're up really high and not very lovely. Anyway, we were trying to get that light and view back into the building with the approach that the architects were taking, which was basically to eliminate that east wall in the building and to work to get the vertical movement of people in the building improved, because the elevator that we were going to share with the parking garage no longer worked because of all these different floor levels. 2 weeks ago, there was a person who uses the library constantly said to me, "Can you come over here and tell me how these elevators work?" I mean, that's 22 years into the deal. It's just a really confusing layout. And, people get off of the elevator and they come back and it's like, dude, where's my car? Like they get in the other elevator and they don't know where the parking garage is. And so there were things that we were trying to fix that we are now willing to live with. Because moving the elevators and trying to, relocate the staircases so that we could open up that east wall, those were all very expensive high-ticket items. The architects were also trying to fix the building so it was intuitive. You came in and the bathrooms were right there on your right. Moving bathrooms cost a lot of money. They were trying to get the most flexible layout possible, with it being very easy to get around the building if you were in a wheelchair. And because of all these different levels between the library building and what would happen with the expansion on the parking garage, it was a very costly fix. And in trying to maintain a very flexible layout, they were proposing fixing the meeting room so that we could open up doors and have that spill off onto the main level, so that you could have big gatherings and performances, move the stacks out of the way. Anyway, that's all off the table because it just was too expensive a project for the public to want to fund. So what we're working on now is staying within the 44-foot easement. So we're switching from the approach of having the canopy roof that would have supported the weight of the building. Now we're going to have underground support, and we've worked with the city to get an agreement that we are going to be able to go out and rest that support on the 60-foot wall underground, where we were trying to do that initially through the canopy. So if we're able to do this, then we'll be able to address these needs of getting the children's room up into a different location where it's more secure, and get the meeting room into a place where it's got its own entrance and exit. The meeting room, as it's configured now, it's fine when you've got little kids sitting on the floor, but when you've got an adult program, a program for adults with a projection screen, if you're not in the first couple of rows, you can't see 2/3 of the screen. And we've had people come, that are trying to do major film programs when the Wheelers booked, that have looked at our meeting room and just said, well, there's no way this is going to work. So we really would like to get a beautiful community room, and I think that the donation that we've been promised will make that happen. If we can get the stacks lower and provide better browsing, I think that will just make it that much more fun for people to come and use the library and discover new things to read, and it will help with the accessibility issues for people who are in wheelchairs. We really want to get these small group study rooms. For those of you who have been to the Basalt Library, you know that the ones that are there are just in constant use. We have people every day coming and saying, where can I Skype? Where can I work on a computer and talk on my cell phone at the same time? And we would be able to get that done for people within our budget. And that, I think, is maybe the end of my show. So, did I leave any time for? Oh, good. We're great. Okay. So anyway, questions that we could address?
So Kathy, what is the ask today in terms of the supplemental budget?
Well, we're not asking for any supplemental money at this point in time. What we were wondering is if you folks felt comfortable with us moving ahead, basically, and to go out for an RFP to see if we can afford to meet the library's needs, not the big wish list that we started with, but just to get the needs met, and to do this in coordination with the parking garage, because we really feel that's the most responsible thing that we can do with this money that was given to us 16 years ago.
All right, thank you. Steve, you had your hand up?
Yeah, at what point will we see the new plans from the architect showing the elevations and floor plans?
Boy, Jack, do you know what?
If we move forward with the RFP in August, I would say November, December, we'd have the first schematic. Probably November, we'd have the first schematic drawings.
I'm sorry, may I follow up on that? Do the RFPs come back with schematics, or are they just budgetary RFPs? Because then we commit to a bid.
Yes.
And then they come back with design, some preliminary design ideas, and they work with the board and the library staff, and then you guys would present to us. So if we submit in August, the RFPs come back the end of September, you think, as soon as?
We're hoping to get the RFPs back in August. So
we'll
we do
get
the
RFPs
process
back in August. We'll
August.
commit to an RFP.
And release them to move forward with the design after we'd come back here.
Yeah.
We present what the direction we think we should go based on the results from the RFP. Then we'd commit to a contract with whomever's selected and move into the design phase. And then as we move forward, there'll be decision points and information coming to the board as in schematic, conceptual, schematic, design development, there's those major phases of design and estimating, and we'd be informing and there'd be decision points along the way.
Steve, are you done?
No, I'm good.
Rob and Michael?
And I don't know that much about how a lot of these big projects like this work, but I have seen throughout the last 20 years, various places in Vermont and here, competition type RFPs. Have we considered doing this as a competition architectural bid? And the way I've seen them run, and I have friends that are architects that have entered these, is they give $5,000 to 10 or 5 architectural firms to put together the designs and the schematics, and then one person wins, and they actually get the architectural contract for moving forward and building it, and the public gets to see 5 designs versus just one design. And this is done quite often in my experience with libraries and museums and school buildings and various community buildings, because you get 5 architects for a very low price to put together general ideas because they're interested in getting the final bid. Of course, there's revenue for the person who wins in the sense that they get 10% of construction cost towards architectural fees, or 15 or 20% in some cases. So have we considered doing this as an architectural bid? I mean, an architectural competition. A design competition.
You know, we haven't. I was familiar with that process too, and it seemed like it kind of fallen out of favor in this community. I don't know, do you have any thoughts about it? We really hadn't thought about it.
My initial thought about it is that with the timing that we're up against with Galena Plaza coordination and trying to get the synergies that would bring to the table, I think it would be difficult in that time frame to facilitate a process like that. There's also, we have an incredible amount of material that's already been developed architecturally on this that we're bringing forward with us, that value's coming forward, and it would be hard to incorporate that into a design competition as well. But I've never done it. But those would be my concerns right off the bat.
Michael?
What is the RFP process that you're contemplating? What is it? Is it for design? What is it for?
Right now it's for design build, to meet the current needs of the library. We will provide all of the materials that have been generated up to date in that RFP to the responders. And we are looking for architectural services to come in and meet the needs of the library. We're trying to stay as open-minded as possible, not bring the entire design forward that we have to date, but to more express the needs of the library and see where that comes in.
So then that RFP then has a couple elements: cost, right?
Cost, yes.
Cost and design.
Mm-hmm.
And so you will choose that RFP based on cost or design, or both, and who's going to choose it?
The way the procurement process works is we'll put a selection committee together. There'll be a team of 4 or 5 people that review the RFPs. There'll be scoring
What
criteria.
4 or 5 people?
That will be decided, I would assume, by Kathy and myself. The scoring criteria will be included with the RFP. Generally, it's 20% for performance, 25% for similar projects. Cost will be a significant factor, whether it's 25 or 30%. There'll probably be a local preference of 5 or 10% included in the scoring criteria, so that will all be laid out in the RFP.
And then how is the design aspect treated in the RFP?
The similar projects. They'll have to present to us similar projects that they've done.
So they won't actually be generating design at that point.
No.
They will just show you projects that they think fit within the scope of your RFP.
Yes.
Okay. And then when you choose someone, then that design process, how does that take place then?
The design process would, the design process for this building that we're going through right now started with meeting with all the stakeholders, finding out what the goals of the design needed to be at the end of the day, what the programming of the building is today, what it is moving forward, and how that looks. And we start there, and then we're not starting in a box. We do have a lot of work that Kathy and other people have put into this, and that'll be put on the table, and I'm sure that it'll move forward from there.
So you do have an enormous amount of input from the community already, and then it seems to me what you'd want to do is take that input, look at your goals, the children's room, the mezzanine, the browsing, the whole thing, whatever those goals are. I think actually you need to articulate those more clearly, and then you have that public input and say, well, listen, this is our project, this is our public input, what can you do? That'd probably be part of the RFP, wouldn't it? I mean,
Public outreach will be part of the...
but we're not going to go through a whole nother public outreach, are we? A brand new public outreach?
I think that we probably have a series of open houses as the process moves forward, and what we want is a design-build process where we're probably meeting on a weekly basis to keep the costs
contained.
Yeah, contained.
So that we don't end up at the end of the day with something we can't afford or doesn't meet our needs. So there'll be a contractor at the table during the design process that moves forward with us, reviewing design costs and moving forward so that at the end of the day, we have complete buy-in.
And that we keep referring to we, who's we again? Is it that group that's choosing the RFP, or are we past that now with a different we? Who's that we?
Well, the library board, I would say.
The library board. So you'll have a committee that choose the RFP. You'll have the library board to go forward with the design work. Okay. I'm just trying to figure out what this process is. And let me say, first of all, I'm totally sympathetic to this project. I think that the community made a mistake, quite frankly, in the expansion of it. I look on the library as one of the cultural legs of town. And given that, it seems to me you're going back and looking at what you can do with your own resources is very wise. But I think the process that you go through needs to be understood, certainly by us, and most likely by the public too, because people are going to view this more skeptically, I think, the second time. Mm-hmm. So
I think the next time we come here, we'll have a better idea what that time frame looks like, and surely after we get through the RFP process, we'll actually have a schedule with milestones and what that looks like, when we're coming back with information to the board, when there's decision points, all that will be clearly defined in the schedule. But we're trying to move forward to get to that point where we can drill down on those things and be accurate with.
And so the final okay will be with the library board. We'll have a budgetary consideration, but the library board will be the person who's developing that RFP and developing the designs thereafter. Is that right?
Yes, but the board also has major decision points in that process as well.
Because the
there's-
Board of County Commissioners.
Yes,
The Board of County Commissioners will have decision points in terms of budgetary.
correct.
Okay. But the library board is going to be choosing what design, what configuration suits the library best. Okay.
And just to piggyback off on that, with your open houses, there will be some opportunity to get and receive input on those designs as they're being developed. And they may have the opportunity to tweak them a little bit or provide suggestions to the library board. So it's not necessarily set in stone.
Yes, but I think, the difference between this process and the last process was that in the initial process, we were still like being a little more creative, I think, than we're going to be able to be this time. There's just going to be things where you're just going to have to say, I know that you would like to be able to sit here and look out that way, but that's not going to happen.
Thank you. Rachel?
Yeah. It's funny, I think that what has transpired with the library and where we are now is like a depiction of that old expression that the best is the enemy of the good. And I think we can do an awful lot of good things in the library and for the community and for the public that uses the library without perhaps addressing all the mistakes or not truly mistakes, but things like the parking garage rising up and the evolution of libraries. I mean, to me, the number one thing is that libraries are not passé. They are an evolving institution within our community and within the nation, and they really are encompassing the same new needs that go along with the digital era. And not every family has a computer at home, or if they have a computer at home, it's not necessarily in space large enough to have 3 of your friends over to work on a school project. So a couple of things that have been mentioned. I've been through design competitions before, particularly with Burlingame. And the process is usually you go out for a request for qualifications first to pick the team. So that gives you another month or 6 weeks into your timeline. And then you pick your teams, and they have to be willing to do it. I think Burlingame, it may have been $10,000. It could have been more. Maybe it was more than that to each of the 5 teams to bring in their designs. And it was really interesting because at that point, it was the number of units was open and the budget was open. And in this process, there's a fixed budget, and there's fixed goals and there's fixed layout. So if we were doing a blank slate type of project, I think we might see more value in that than where there really are only so many configurations. And frankly, you really got a lot of feedback from architectural teams to say they hate design competitions, that they feel like it's just a way to try to get a lot of free work out of them, and that some teams just don't even bid. You don't necessarily get all your people. It's like, I'm not going to put $100,000 worth of design work in for $10,000 with a 1 in 5 chance of winning. So that was just a little funny quirk that I found afterwards. But you don't always get the teams bidding that you would like to see bidding. And so I do like, although we may have to further refine this, and I don't know if it's a check back with our board or not, but the pros and cons of doing requests for proposals, architectural design work, and then getting the schematics and the construction costs from a different firm, that's where I think you sometimes can have the disconnect. Whereas if we do the design build type of program, then they both know the budget to begin with, and they're designing within that budget. And because there's nothing worse than someone designing something and then coming back in, and when it's actually gone out to bid, that's when you see the cost increase that are out of pocket, and that's kind of what happens on some of ours. I mean, it just seems to be that way on some of the projects in the past, whether it's open space and trails, or we just had wrong older plug numbers in the budget. But it's not until you actually have a bid that you know what your costs will be for that design. So combining those two, to me, is the greatest security of staying within our goals. And I think this has some opportunities, because Michael asked some very good questions about process. and we'd all have to think about the pros and cons of that, but I don't know that it would be set that your committee couldn't include a BOCC representative or two, or some from our staff, so that we feel integrated with the project. Now, on the other hand, board members might not want to do that so that they can all look at it objectively later and vote on it clean without having been part of that selection. So that's a pro and a con, but it's not to say that at this point we have to decide who that final selection committee will be, 6 months from now, 4 months from now, so however that goes. And I guess I would just like to reiterate that I also am very sympathetic to this project. I'm very supportive of this project. I think the library is a huge asset, and as I think you noted in the memo, you saw over 1,000 users on a single day in July of this year. And that's huge. That's a huge asset. And I certainly know that space for presentations and for meetings is really short in this community. And if you've attended any work sessions or programs down in the meeting room at the BOCC library, where they really have a high ceiling and have that projector and have that ability to entertain groups beyond the low ceiling that we have in our windowless meeting room in the basement, I think that would be great. So, about a year and a half ago, I attended a Healthy Mountain Communities, their State of the Valley presentation in Glenwood Springs, and they had a great design speaker, internationally acclaimed, talking about what brings life to cities and what brings community together, and what really fosters that desirable place to be type of building. And they did touch on libraries. They certainly talked about how your post offices could be designed better, or your transportation centers could be designed better for that sort of connectivity with community goals and emphasizing community values. But libraries were really right on the top of the list, and I really wouldn't mind looking at seeing if we could bring that person in or review the tapes of that or something like that. But they just talked about how those are just, so crucial to cities that are reinventing themselves and refreshing themselves, and kind of like that life cycle we saw about departments when we talked about departments. Are they still on an upswing? Are they starting to decline? Or where are they? And I certainly would love to keep our library on an upswing, as it's always been. And the generosity of past donors and current donors certainly is something to be respected and be thankful for, and I greatly appreciate. So I just want to ask one last kind of final question. So you don't believe there's any dollars associated with the process of putting together the request for proposals? Is there any amount that needs to be allocated now that would be a more minor amount until we get to the next phase, or is this totally a free look at this point of just putting out the request for proposals?
Yeah, I don't think there's any money needed right now.
Just direction to proceed with the request for proposals. Okay.
We're almost out of time here. The takeaways I'm getting from this presentation, and it was a very good presentation, so thank you both, is that the idea to renovate the current library is based on need, which I think we all understand. The ability to do that is based on a capital pool that has been designated, earmarked specifically for library expansion for many, many years. And the timing is also critical in terms of coordinating with the city as they're redoing the parking garage. And so with those three criteria, I'm fully supportive of moving ahead. So I'll just ask the board, perhaps with a nod of heads, if everyone's comfortable with giving the go-ahead to move forward, to go out for an RFP based on cost and design.
Yes. One quick comment regarding that, but yes, I'm in favor of it.
Okay.
My quick comment is that I think the RFP has to include ongoing operational costs. I don't want to build a building that's expensive to run, or I don't think you should build a building that's expensive to run down the road. Obviously, you're going to save money in your capital reserve for an increase in operational costs given an increase of square footage, but energy efficiencies, staff efficiencies, those sorts of things I think are crucial because there's only so much water in the bucket. So that, I think should be included, that the RFP, the people that are bidding on this, need to not only look at the cost with $1 million left over, but is that $1 million sufficient to operate that additional facility ongoing?
All right, I think we have to go ahead. You had a last
Yeah, I'm
comment.
very supportive of this project too, and just to reiterate what you have said, Rob, I look at the operating cost as kind of, if you can have an endowment, say, to operate the expanded library, but that the amount needed for that endowment could be reduced by having a really good design, so you don't need to increase your staffing to take care of the bigger area. If it's, the proper energy efficiency things put into the new building, that space could be operated with little or no additional input of energy into it, and those things could reduce the amount of the endowment that's needed. But those things really play into the actual design that is coming from the company. So,
Rachel?
Yeah, I'll make it before our deadline here. I just want to mention that I really think that you've been responsive to the voters and to the messages that came back, to work within your existing budget, to scale the project back to the original easement that the library had. That was the only reason the parking garage was able to be created, was the library gave up some of its area to be able to allow that to go forward. And that easement was something that you were directed by the city council at the time to say go on out further to enhance the space, and obviously that was just the wrong direction and was taken wrong. But the elimination of the canopy and the pullback to within the library's easement, I think it is the right move, and this is a very responsive proposal to work within your own budget. So as long as that budget number is in that request for proposals as well, and we don't get architects dreaming too big, that's great for me.
Good, so you got to go ahead, and thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
And Grassroots, we're going to break for lunch, and we'll be back here at 1 o'clock.
Okay, very good.
George, I do have Suzanne coming 15 minutes early because housing.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're back at our Tuesday's work session, and next on the agenda, we've got a series of citizen interviews for some of our boards. And first is Lee Mulcahy, who is applying for the Senior Services Council Board as an alternate. So Lee, why don't you come up? Welcome. Thank you for applying. The process is we just go around and ask you a series of questions, and then get a better understanding of why you're interested in serving on the board and things like that. Anybody would like to start?
Sure.
Rachel?
I always kind of start with a softball for everybody. But what do you think you could bring to the board? The Senior Services Board, obviously.
Empathy, patience, love your neighbor.
Okay.
We just started. Questions? Michael?
Lee, I know you, at least through the newspapers, as a community provocateur. So how do we reconcile that reputation of yours with the reputation or the desire to be on the Senior Citizens Board, which is completely different from being a community provocateur?
Well, of course, I would. Some people say that about you too, because you take up for the little guy. And serving is about serving your fellow man. I don't see, I guess, the difference between fighting for freedom, whether it's, your company fires a musician and then bans a newspaper and restricts freedom of speech, protected freedom of speech. That's standing up for the little guy. Because when someone comes and stands up in a big organization, like this Edward Snowden guy, power goes after him. And when and you fought this fight, I'm sure, many times in your life. In Texas, they raised us with a backbone. And I am extremely sorry that the feud has gone this far. But I honor my parents. I have the most amazing parents in the world. And my mama said, Lee, you may want to come home, but you need to stick it out, because if you leave, they'll win. And this guy that has exposed, and I know we're on the same side, so that's why I'm being so frank. But this, I was a whistleblower, and just look at what happened to Snowden. I mean, the United States Army has now banned The Guardian, the newspaper that published all this. Well, wow, we've kind of forgotten what we're fighting for, freedom, right? So when you stand up, like this guy has, against power, for freedom, for little people, you get called a provocateur. And I lived here in this community for 16 years before you ever knew me. But they're bullies. We all know that. And if it wasn't me, it was going to be somebody. Now I know you had concerns because you told me that the Kill Obama vandalism that was on my house, you said it was similar to, but it was you thought it was my handwriting, but it was block letters. And although that I think that our president is has issues with the freedom of the press and civil liberties, I would never do that. I'm an Eagle Scout. And although I may disagree with him, and I may disagree with you, I will always shake your hand. You know that about me. And I was framed. I don't know by who. But, you know, I called the police at 10 a.m. 6 hours later, the Secret Service shows up with the police. And I was told not to cover it up. So all I did was follow orders. And then I kind of got blamed for it. Anyway, but to answer your question, I think that as human beings, if we can love our neighbor as much as we can, and we serve others, I think that no matter what they throw at me, I think people know that I'm funny, I have a wicked sense of humor, but I have a good heart. And that's why I'm here.
So, Lee, so you're saying that, well, those are issues of the First Amendment, and you're sticking up for the little guy, so forth and so on. How does that translate to being on the Senior Services Board? I mean, what do you then bring to the Senior Services Board? Do you bring controversy, or do you bring...
No. I volunteer tutor at Christ Church. You know, I do a lot of service. And I do Meals on Wheels on every other Fridays. So I've been a volunteer in many organizations, and you haven't heard controversy. Now, I did a painting at the art museum didn't like, so I got banned, but they banned Richie Cohen, and he's on oxygen 70. You know, he's hardly a threat. But, you know, I've pissed off certain powers in this town, and they're not going to let me forget it. Now, I came to this when you know, a couple years ago when this fight began, and they suspended me and they banned me from company property well before I was fired, and I asked you guys to say something, and you declined. Now, there are, you know, I served on the Aspen Historical Society as a trustee for 8 years, so I know there are precedents from this organization. And the reason they felt they could overreach so far is because the leaders in our community didn't say anything. I mean, many did, but some were down valley, and you know, and some were columnists. But it's just an overreach. I mean, this happens all the time. And the frustrating thing is, corporations in America, I've learned, they do what they want, Michael. They disregard the law.
Lee, I want us to focus on this appointment here versus espousing some of your political views. This is really not the right forum for that. So it's more...
I thought I was just asked that.
Well, I'm not sure you were, Michael. I thought it was more of a direct question in terms of what are you going to bring to the Senior Service Council?
Service. Love my fellow man and help them.
Steve?
I see you have quite a few college degrees, and are that points out that you really think through issues, and you know, are a very thoughtful person. The Senior Services Council is a blend of wisdom of older people who are contributing to the council and youthful energy of younger people, you know, wanting to help out and do their part. And how would you see yourself fitting into the Senior Services Council, and what kind of things would you like to see happen there?
I'm there, how do I fit in? I think I have a youthful energy, and I have a good ear, and everybody's got a story, so I'm a good listener. And I would serve in whatever capacity that they need. I'm not, you know, I serve on Warren Klug's First Breakfast the first Sunday of every month. It's nice to be part of a team. I'm not looking to come in there and create controversy or anything like that. I'm just there to be part of a team and serve.
Rob?
Two questions kind of related. First, thank you for applying, because we have a great citizen volunteer group, and we need our citizens to be involved. The two questions are, one, kind of historically, how have you been involved with the seniors in our community? And two, going forward, what do you think the big needs are going to be? We see a demographic shift happening with more seniors in our population here, and things like the continuing care center and those sorts of things. So historically, how have you been involved, and going forward, what do you think the big needs are?
Historically, I haven't been involved much at the senior center, except recently when I started doing Meals on Wheels on Fridays. And whenever they can call me, and I live real close, so I can run there and do that. Going forward, I think that service is for people that don't have the capability to always leave their home. Providing that and providing transportation. My church asked me to run them from the senior center to the music festival on Fridays. However, I can't do that. It'd be in violation of a restraining order from the Aspen Institute. But I think facilitating their needs, especially older citizens that don't have the capability to get around, to be as mobile as maybe they wanted to.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, thank you, Lee, for applying, and we'll
Thank you
get
for the
back to you in a
opportunity.
short period of time.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Okay, next is Isabel Wolfer, if I pronounced that correctly. And Isabel is applying for the youth position on a Healthy Community Fund Citizen Grant review. So thank you for applying.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome. So you sort of saw the process here.
Yeah.
Would you like to start with a question? Michael?
So, do you have a restraining order against you?
No, not that I know of.
Okay, I just wanted to get that clear. Do you go to the Aspen High School, is that right?
Yep, I'm 16, so I'll be entering Aspen High School as a junior, and I was born and raised here, so I've been in the school system since kindergarten.
Since the Aspen school system?
Yeah, in the Aspen school system.
Good for you. And why do you want to be on the grant committee?
I think first and foremost, I'm really interested in pursuing a career in public service, and I think this would allow me to just such a huge exposure of things in my local community, which I just adore so much, of certain institutions that have intentions which are like at very least indirectly related to public service, or their intentions are very, very similar into the career I want to pursue. And I think the more experience you have with it, then the more aware you are, and the more successful you could be with that. And secondly, I just adore the community so much. Like I said, I was born and raised here, and I just think it'd be such a wonderful opportunity to be able to immerse myself in the community and learn from others and be able to contribute.
Great answer, thank you.
Rob?
I'm going to ask another two-part question. First, thanks for applying. Again, we need great citizen people like you applying for these positions. Again, kind of looking back, what are you most proud of over the last couple of years through your school or anything that you've been involved with? And then going forward, what are your goals in personal, professional life at this point moving forward?
I think what I would be most proud of in 8th grade, I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Outdoor Ed program, but in 8th grade you go on the Big Outdoor Ed and you do things, and they're designed to take you outside of your comfort zone. And for me personally, I think that it's very easily to get confined to your comfort zone, especially if you grow up in a place like this, just because you're so, I'm so comfortable with my classmates. I've been with them since I was so young. So so it kind of forces you to a certain extent to do these scary things and to do a solo and to do like the high rappel and Superman. It's something very specific to this community that I was able to learn and grow from, and I think that is absolutely fantastic. And then my goals for the future, like I said, I'm doing the IB program for the next 2 years at the school, and I really just want to be as involved in the school as I possibly can. The school has such fantastic opportunities for us. They have so many service clubs. I'm involved in, I think, 5 or 6 at this point, and they're just really lovely, and they're so well organized, and they do such a good job of letting us as community members work within the groups, and there's such great opportunities. So to stay committed to those, I think, would be my biggest goal.
Great.
Yeah.
Rachel?
Yeah, so I take it from your comments and your resume that you are going to be a junior this year?
Mm-hmm.
And so you would be in the school district for another 2 years,
Yeah.
this year and next year. Okay, thank you, because it's always good to have members who can have some continuity from year to year.
Right.
And what are kind of some of your major focus areas in your schoolwork or potentially going forward with college? I realize that's a broad question,
Yeah.
but...
In academic areas?
Yeah.
I think my favorite right now, I love social science. I'm very kind of, I really like things where you can analyze them and discuss them as opposed to just a straightforward answer. So I love social science. I love reading and writing and that sort of analysis and stuff that's you can go beyond it and you can offer different opinions and everything. And like I said, I'm interested in studying social work or public service or something of that nature once I get to university, which I think would provide similar circumstances.
And I guess the follow-up question, and Mitzi can maybe help me fill in as needed, but it really is a very big time commitment for 1 week. And is that going to be the end of August before school has started, or how's that going to be lined up?
Actually, the way it does work is that our grants come in the first week of August. We have them ready to give to the committee around the 12th this year is what we're planning. So the major reading period is 3 to 4 weeks from August 12th to, actually this year, our first committee meetings are going to be September 3rd, right after Labor Day. So it is kind of right at the beginning of school. It's an awkward, I admit, it is an awkward time frame. It's right at the beginning of school, but the major homework, if you will, the scoring and reading is all done in August. By the time we hit the dinner meetings, it's the discussion and the recommendations for funding, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, and so the meetings will be held in September outside of the school day?
They will be starting at 4:30, depending on the committee, and going for several hours each night. We're hoping, it's a dinner meeting, so we do it all very structured. We go through the list, and
Okay,
yes.
Well, that's good that you've informed both of our applicants, who
Yes.
is here in the audience as well,
Yes.
to be able to answer this question. But do you feel you have the time to make the time commitment?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have a fall sport this year, so I don't have any after-school commitments or commitments that were, unforeseen in a particular way. So I can't see anything that would prevent me from being able to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions, Steve?
A couple questions. One, do you participate in any fall sports at school where the practices start in August and would cut into your time?
I won't have a fall sport. I only do. I'll be having a winter sport and a spring sport, but I don't have a fall one this year. So my schedule's pretty wide open.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are your favorite hobbies or classes in school, that sort of thing?
I really, in addition to ones I've already met, the writing and reading and stuff, I really love art also to do that. I took a ceramics course I've been enrolled in an art class every semester. I've been in there, and I think that relates to school. We have really great art facilities at the high school and so many different avenues you can go down. So I love doing that. Additionally, I spent the last semester abroad, so I've been spending the last, and I had to make the money to be able to do that. So I spent a large portion of my time I had spent working for that and preparing for that and getting ready.
Okay.
But I really enjoyed that. It was work I really loved. So.
And have you done any work with any of the nonprofit groups who might be applying for funding?
Yeah, I'm in Outreach Club and then 4 additional service clubs at the high school. But I think through Outreach Club, that's the one that really connects you with it's a huge variety. It's such a vast exposure. So they're the ones who connect you with so many, and it's from it's environmental groups and senior citizen groups and just other nonprofits throughout the valley. So I've had a fair amount of experience with them.
Okay.
Isabel, what are you doing for fun this summer?
This summer, I just actually got back from traveling. I finished up my semester and then I traveled around Europe for 3 weeks. It was absolutely wonderful. So I just got home a couple days ago. But my mom has a preschool, so I'm working there, and I love that so much. It was my first day back today. I was so happy. They were so wonderful. So yeah, I'll be finishing up that.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Michael?
Is your mom Mary Wolf?
Yeah, she is.
Okay, great.
Well, thank you very much for
Thank
applying.
you very much.
Nice
Thanks for the
meeting you.
opportunity, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another applicant for the citizen grant review, which is great as well. And this is Julia Herboski,
Correct.
correct? Well, welcome again. Thank you for applying.
Thank you.
And you saw sort of the process here, so we'll open this up. Who'd like to ask a question first?
Rob, I'll go back. Again, thank you for applying.
Thank you for...
I'll go back to the same question, so you kind of get a leg up hearing some of the questions. What are you proud of that you've accomplished over the last couple of years, and what are your goals going forward?
Okay, so in 8th grade, I'm going to Aspen High School as a junior. I'm in Isabel's class. And I moved here during the 8th grade from New York, and transitioning into a new school is one of the hardest things I've ever done. The social, aspect of it, it's hard. But I overcame that, and through the years, I finally feel joyful and like overcoming the struggle. I think I've noticed that in my life, and now I can look back and say, I made it through that milestone. Now I gotta keep going. And also doing service for the community. I'm part of the Outreach Club and the Buddy Program. And the Buddy Program has opened my eyes to how you can truly help someone and touch people's lives through just being there. And I've never honestly gotten that from anything else I've done. And that's what I'm most proud of, for sure.
And moving forward,
Yeah.
what are your goals going forward?
Well, prospectively, my goals to help people. I'm not sure if the human resource, is right for me. I'm exploring that, or I'm going to be health career, but I just want to touch people's lives in some way and just make an impact positively.
The attitude is much better than having a plan, so
Yeah.
it's good to hear.
Well, go to
You don't need to have a plan. No.
I'll be doing IB, the 3 IB classes, and see from there.
Rachel?
I certainly think it's great to build a broad platform when you're younger and figure out exactly where you're going to go later and have that platform enable any of those types of opportunities. And so you're a junior as well.
I am a junior.
Okay, that's good information. And then what are your main academic interests and studies? And, I know you get to choose some electives and go back and forth, but what seem to be your interests at this point?
English. I've always thrived in English, and other than thriving, I love it. It's something that I've immersed myself in my entire school career. Ever since I was young, I've known it's been one of my passions. Science, I'm doing IB English, and then also biology is truly interesting for me. I'm one of those people who, when you put something to dissect in front of me, I go hog wild. So it's really interesting. And language, I've always excelled in Spanish, and I want to explore other opportunities. My dad's from Austria, so I know German, and I want to learn English.
German.
No, Italian. Sorry. That was a twist of the words.
It's okay. As I asked before, you heard the kind of outline of the schedule of the board's commitments. What are your time commitments, and do you have fall sports, as Steve asked, or anything like that might interfere?
I don't have any fall sports. I'm doing winter and spring sports, so my schedule's open for the fall.
Thank you.
Michael?
For Mitzi, how do you expect us to choose between these two young ladies? Can both of them be appointed? We have.
Okay, thank you for asking that question. It would be my total joy if we could have both of these young ladies. The Home Rule Charter does dictate 5 members for citizen boards. Currently, with Ellen K. Hunt, who came before you about 6 weeks ago as our replacement adult member, who has been appointed, we have 4 adults. We have Doris Downey, Robin Van Domelen, Ellen Hunt, and Ashley Connolly. We had the 1 youth vacancy. I just feel like it's a plethora of riches for me. You know, so many times it's been hard to even find 1 youth who is interested, and now I have 2, not only who are interested, but are incoming juniors. So the issue would be what to do. The Home Rule Charter does dictate that you can have up to 5 alternates. That is allowed, and it doesn't specify whether youth or adult. So I'm putting this in the board's hands as to how we could do this. And I know last year we discussed this.
Yeah, that'll be for further discussion, but,
Okay,
yeah, thank you.
so, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Steve?
The IB program, I take it, requires extra time to do the academic work involved. Have you done those classes before, and how do you see that, your schedule working in with doing the extra responsibilities for that?
I've never done IB before because it's their class is designed for juniors and seniors, and I'm just coming out of sophomore year. So it's something, IB is something new for me. They're college classes designed for high school students, and I'm excited about it. I like a challenge. I think that handling my time, it's going to be a struggle, but that's something you need to learn in life. You need to make time for things that are important to you. So that's how I'm going into looking at it. If it's too hard, it's a commitment, and that's what you have to know that before going in. So I thought about it, and I chose the IB programs that meant the most to me. I didn't overload myself and try to push myself on the verge of, complete breakdown. So, yeah. And I know that this, being on the committee, it's also ties in with, it's a lot of work, but it's worth it, I think.
Yeah, I think both of you must be good with scheduling your time. Otherwise, you wouldn't have even probably thought about applying for an extra, being on a committee for doing extra work. But how do you go about setting up your schedule, like daily schedule or weekly schedule?
I make lists. I put it in my planner so I can look at it. I think if I don't do that, I have a lot of stuff going on, so I need to, make reminders to myself, and I'll get it done. And yeah.
Okay. And what are you doing for fun this summer?
I'm finding a job, hanging out with my friends, and I'm making a trip to Hawaii for a week. And I'm leaving, August 1st.
Great. Well, good. Any other questions? Well, thank you for applying. Thank both of you for applying. I mean, some of the questions that were asked here, if some of those questions were asked of me when I was in college, I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And so,
Very impressive, both of you.
Thank you.
thank you both.
And thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mitzi.
You want?
Okay, that's it for our interviews, and I think, what time is Suzanne?
1:45 she was expected to get here.
1:45.
So we have a little bit of time.
Why don't we move on to, I guess we can do memos, well, we can do future agendas, I guess.
There's quite a few changes on future agendas from what you were provided. The first, last week, we talked about rescheduling the joint city council meeting that was scheduled for August 6th. That the first available date with city council is September 17th. So the prep for that city council meeting was moved out too.
Okay.
So next week's agenda has some openings I'm sure they're going to fill. You will not have an executive session next week, July 23rd. Both John Neely and John's on vacation and Chris will be in DC on that Tuesday. So on August 6th, that was opened up a little bit with City Council.
Can we go back to July 23rd first?
Yeah.
So we won't have an exec session, and so we may look at starting
At 1?
at 1 o'clock.
Right. And right now, we're looking at a translator update, either at 1 or in the 3 o'clock slot. You have 2 slots open at this point. The Translator Advisory Board came up with recommendations for FM station changes. And from our conversations in the past, that'll be a board decision, but we wanted to have a work session with you all before it came to you in a formal action.
Okay, so then I asked Phyllis this yesterday, but will we need more time on the 23rd with APSHA, the policy issues?
And APSHA's going to move to August 6th. They wanted to be in advance as close as possible to the joint meeting with City Council. So at this point, August 6th was as far or as close to in front of their meeting as they could get. And they are scheduled for an hour. They're looking at some of the issues which were membership on the APSHA board, retiring policy within the APSHA guidelines. So there's a list of things that are possible. They don't have them all identified at this point yet.
And they'll be looking for direction from the board?
They're going to want a discussion before the joint meeting, and I think they're looking for direction at the joint meeting, but being able to have discussions beforehand with both the commissioners and with the council, so they can kind of do some legwork if there's any issues that come up on the issues that they need to work on before they present them for approval.
Okay. Rachel?
Yeah, I'm not going to be at the 23rd meeting, and so this is kind of a broader comment. I'll be in Texas with the National Association of Counties. But I thought we had kind of discussed the idea that we don't want to see our joint work sessions with the City Council evolve into housing meetings. And, you know, I think that maybe this approach of meeting with our two boards separately on the policy may limit that to just a quick approval going forward, but I'm not sure. You know, these are fairly meaty issues, and the city and the county might have different approaches. But I think that as we get further into the summer, we need to discuss, do we want housing issues to dominate our joint work session when we're fairly obviously going to have big issues like human services and other matters that we do need to discuss jointly, or whether we should be setting up a housing workshop only, you know, or housing joint meeting only. And so I'll leave that to the board, but I really did want to put that footnote onto that item.
Okay. Okay.
So the APSHA policy issues are moving to August 6th, and we are, at this point, leaving an hour, depending on how long. And Rachel, just for the reasons you're discussing it, it maybe will work, or it will be an opportunity to have that discussion.
And as long as the APSHA knows that they're only going to be talking to 3 of the 5 commissioners.
Yes.
Okay.
They do know that. And then August 6th, also, the first 2 items, the rent funds and the MOU regarding the Energy Smart program, only needed an hour in total instead of 2 hours. So that's APSHA's filling into that other hour, and the airport asked for an update. So that's, we're working on time there.
Okay.
August 13th, your BEAR update. Kevin Wright will be attending again also. We're going to schedule that for 45 minutes so you can have a break before you go into your interviews. I think that's it for changes in August. I already told you September 17th will be City Council. And that is the group for now.
Okay, Ron?
2 quick things just that I noticed as I was going through here, that on August 6th, we have an hour and a half for memos of interest and board reports, and that's probably not needed.
Right, there's only
no
3.
time for the airporter that wanted to be on there. And then the other thing is, just for the record, I am not going to be here for the August 22nd EOTC meeting.
I will also be in Water Congress at that time for the August 22nd EOTC meeting.
I'll be out of town too, so we won't have a quorum there.
Okay.
And that's an important meeting. We should see if there's any opportunity to reschedule that.
I will alert Brian and see what we can come up with.
Just throwing it out there, would August 29th, the following Thursday, be a week that we could suggest for that meeting? Will you be back?
I'll be back.
Yeah. I mean, I just know how
Okay.
hard it is to schedule those.
So August 29th is a potential?
Possible. Seems to.
I do have one other item for future agendas. The assessor's office is asking for an entire day in August for abatement hearings. They have quite a few, looking at maybe August 22nd or 26th.
22nd would be great, I won't be here.
I won't be here either.
I won't be here.
So there you go.
Okay. That's right, you just told me that.
Yeah. I cannot attend the 26th. It's the Basin Roundtable meeting, and as you guys know, there's now this new pressure to have a draft water plan completed by July of next year, so that group has gone back to meeting every month and really moving that forward.
I get back in midday on the 26th, so
Okay.
it's late afternoon. I could find a way to make it.
The airlines are on time.
Yeah.
And they were asking for an entire day.
Yeah.
I don't know how many, but that's their
So is there an
projection.
opportunity to try to, I mean, it may even be more difficult to try to break it up into two days, or are they on a certain time frame that they have to get these hearings done?
I will find out. They asked for it in later in August. That's the only parameter I was
Later in
given.
August? Okay.
George?
Yes.
You know, a full day does sound kind of hard to find, and I don't know if it'll work or not, but if there's a possibility to break it up in such a way that we could do 2 hours on some of those given work session days, that might be a way to put it into manageable chunks. But I'd leave that to you and Phyllis and everyone else to schedule.
Okay, and we'll get with Larry and find out.
Yeah, see if things cancel out or if there's extra time.
Okay.
Okay, so that's going to be a work in progress.
We will follow up. Yep. And that was the only other thing I had.
Okay, anybody else have anything for future agendas? So you've captured who's going to be off out of town for that week of the 17th.
On the 22nd.
24th.
And I was just going to say, an example would be Tuesday, August 27th, where we're starting at 11 a.m. And so maybe we could start at 9 and get 2 hours worth of it done or something.
Okay. We can move on then to the Aspen Community School Site Development Plan, and Suzanne Wolf is here.
Sky Skinner is coming.
Okay.
Let me just take a quick.
Do you have to set up anything?
I just have a map I'll throw on the.
You just need to turn the projector on, everything else is on. That should be on.
Yeah, sure. Yep. Right place.
Thanks for getting here early, right on time.
Yeah, and Sky was definitely planning on being here at 1:45, so you're...
George, can I mention one other thing while we're waiting
Sure.
for the setup? Okay. I just want to throw out the date of September 11th. It's a Wednesday. That is when our regular meeting is occurring. But the Transportation, the State Interim Transportation Committee is going to be hearing in Glenwood Springs. And so it's more of something for Brian Pettit or others to have on their calendar about our transportation needs. I really don't have, there's no agenda, there's nothing else, but I guess there's some hearings through of the State Legislative Transportation Commission. They're touring the state, and this is going to be one of our regional ones.
And what's the date?
On September 11th. So we can find out more detail closer in, and it's more for staff than for
Okay.
us.
And Suzanne, you didn't have anything in the packet for us, did you? Well, I never got anything. Did you?
Yeah, there was a memo.
Community school site?
Wow, I never got it in my Dropbox. Interesting. Okay.
Would you like, do you want a copy?
Yeah, if you have one, that'd be great.
You're right, it's not there.
Not on the online.
It's not in the Dropbox.
Is it
It's
online?
I'm going to go look.
Michael, I could view it
on the
online
line?
then.
Okay.
Do we need to wait for Sky, or can,
She's definitely making the effort to be here. It's really her opportunity, I think, to speak to you and hear from you,
Oh.
so.
5 minutes?
Michael, you had your hand up?
So, have they submitted an application yet?
No.
So,
Part of this is explaining what their process will be with the county,
what they hope their process would be?
what the
State law says.
what the state requires versus any county review.
Okay, why don't we take a 5-minute break, grassroots? We get all the players here. Okay, now we're back. We're ready for a presentation on the Aspen Community School Site Development Plan, and Suzanne Wolf will present this for us. We'll open it up to discussion.
Great. Sky Skinner's here with us, who's the Executive Director of Compass. Is here to talk to you about their plans to redevelop the site up at the Aspen Community School. And just I'll sort of give you the background and the process we're talking about, and then Sky can go into more details in terms of the actual plan they're looking at and timeframes and whatnot. But I think you're all aware, as Rachel was just saying, they got a grant from the state to improve the facilities, and they're looking to break ground next spring, so spring of 2014. So some of the documents that were provided to you included the facility master plan that they had prepared when they were working on that grant, and that goes through basically identifying a lot of the issues that they have with the existing facilities and what they were looking for in terms of improvements. So that's included in this packet. What they're looking at, just in very simple terms, is adding a total of 5,000 square feet of learning space and maintaining the same student capacity. So there would be no change to that. So they're basically just looking to upgrade facilities to continue to do what they do today and serve the same number of students that they're serving today. I provided a lot of background information. I won't go into all of that, but as you're aware, there have been multiple county approvals over the years. Going back to 1995, the property was rezoned to public, PUB, and there was a public master plan approved for the campus. At that time, the school was a private school, so it went through our full master planning process at that time. As they've come in and amended, they subdivided the property. They divided off the 2 residential lots. I think you're all familiar with that. We've amended that approval several times. But through all of that, essentially, there was always this master plan that the county had approved that dated back to 1995 that contemplated improvement of facilities on at the school. And when I looked back, again, that established the capacity for students and anticipated adding 11,500 square feet, some of which has been built, some of which had not. The school is now a public school and is now basically the review of plans for the school and its improvements comes under state statute and is no longer subject to our public master plan process that we've dealt with in the past. So what we're looking at in terms of the county's involvement as this redevelopment moves forward is the review under that state statute that I quoted in here, which requires the school to advise in writing the Planning Commission, which has jurisdiction over the territory where the site is proposed to be located. So this would go to the Planning Commission. They would submit a site development plan, which is essentially the type of thing you see in front of you now. And then the P&Z would review and comment on that site development plan. And there are specific time frames set up in that state statute that govern this. And then there's an opportunity, I guess the P&Z makes comments, the school board responds to those comments. That says if the Planning Commission is not satisfied with the school response, they may request a hearing before the Board of Education. So anyway, this is all laid out in the state statute. So given that, I mean, our review is limited. And then in that next step of the phase, when they go to permits, getting permits for this, those permits are issued by the state as well. They do not go through our building permit review and inspection process. So again, our review process is limited, but Sky has recognized that we've all been very involved with this over the years and wanted to meet with you and maintain an open conversation with the county as they go through this and obtain input at other points if seen appropriate beyond what the state is specifically requiring. So that's kind of why Sky is here today, is to start that conversation, I think, and inform you kind of about how they're starting their process as they get into the more detailed design phase on the project and start to work their way through. So that's what we're hoping just to kind of discuss today. There's the bare bones of what the process is. This is an opportunity, obviously, for you to identify issues, concerns you might have that you want us to make sure we're looking at, that the Planning Commission is considering when they do their formal review, as well as sort of anything else I think you want to bring up. One thing I skipped on the background front is just the update on the work and the intersection in the septic system, which we have pictures. Good. So the driveway, and Sky can probably give more detail, but the driveway intersection improvements have been completed. Work on the septic system is underway. They're hoping to complete it this fall, so that will be meeting their deadline of, I think it was the end of this year, December 31 of 2013. The next requirement related to providing units for 4 employees on the site. And their plans are in 2014. Once the septic system is essentially the trigger for much of anything to happen out there. The improved septic system then allows them to bring those units online next year, and to sort of finalize the completion of those improvements that we've been talking about for a number of years out there. So that was just a quick update, and it looks like Sky has more info on that.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Suzanne? Not at this point. Sky, we'll turn this over to you.
Okay. It's been an amazing journey. It's been an amazing year. It's been an amazing 12 years leading up to this. We've really been working toward this point as an organization for a long time. In 2002, we developed a really comprehensive strategic plan. That was when we were in the midst of a major leadership transition at Compass, and we really had to kind of pick ourselves up by our bootstraps and figure out how we're going to make sure that our schools are self-sustaining for a long time into the future. We marched down the list of that strategic plan for a lot of years. We really adhered to that and took it seriously. And we're very successful in getting our business house in order. And the last big piece of work that we need to accomplish is this facility piece. Our facilities have really been failing. This is not a frivolous plan. We still have the original roof on our 1972 school that's leaking. We've had this winter saw our propane systems failing and pipes corroding underground, and we only just this year finally kind of gave in and replaced our original boiler, which I think we should have made a sculpture out of and put out in our grounds. But we have to do this. The school was originally built for 70 to 80 students. We now have 127. We have twice the faculty that we had when the school was founded, and we're just packed. We're packed. There are places in the school, which is a really beloved building, but where the ceilings are only 4 feet high. So even of the 8,000 square feet that we have to work with, much of it is not anything like up to code or really usable space. So we're excited, and I feel really good about working with the county on this in a way that works for you. We've worked together on this. You've been a part of this process from the beginning with our various incarnations of our master plans over the years. This work that we're doing, which I don't think is new to any of you, is actually much more modest than many of the plans that were proposed back in the day in terms of square footage and build out and population, really keeping our population static here. We really tried every step of the way to stay in character with our neighborhood. We love our sense of place, and it's always been an important part of the school to be on that exceptional mesa and to have strong relationships with our neighbors and with the caucus and certainly with the county that we reside in. So We raised $9.1 million since August of last year. Never done anything remotely like that. I think the most money we had ever raised prior to that was about $350,000 in a year. So that was just a huge effort, and it was an amazing groundswell of our really passionate parent community, and then kind of rippling out to our broader community. It was an amazing thing to be a part of. I don't know if we ever would have really done it if we had known how hard it was going to be. It was like drinking from a fire hose, but it was very, very powerful, and it was a fantastic success. And we still have a ways to go. We've got about another $2.5 million that we need to raise in order to accomplish the full $11.6 million plan. But we have enough money in the bank now to get started on this project. Last week we completed a public bid process for owner's representative, and we have hired Concilium Partners. They're out of Edwards and Denver to be the owner's reps for this project. Our next step will be in sometime in August. We'll go out to bid for an architect for the project. We haven't done anything like detailed construction drawings yet. So that'll be a really exciting phase of this. It was on purpose that we haven't done any construction drawings yet. We had to make sure we had the money to bring an architect on board and do that detailed work. We've been really careful not to spend money we don't have. When we did the master plan with CCY Architects, that was a very distinct project that we went out to bid for, and its own small fundraising initiative to make that happen. But so now we're really ready to start investing in getting some of that work done. The work that's being done is pretty amazing. I'm probably one of the few people in the area who couldn't be more excited to see a backhoe. Because it was a long time coming. This is some of the work that's been done on the intersection.
Just start them all with them.
Just start them all here.
And also you can see some of our manholes and some of the septic work being done on the leach field. This middle picture, there's a little white dot. That's a guy's hard hat. I couldn't believe the size of these septic trenches and manhole holes. Quite impressive. So that's been going great. The driveway, everything I've heard about the driveway has been really well received. From the first glowing report I got was from our school bus driver at the very end of the year, who could, for the first time, really navigate that tight corner without being, having to kind of jockey into position and be nervous about oncoming traffic. So that was great. So we're excited about that. Your goals were our goals. It just took us a while to get around to having the money to do it.
Good, thank you. Questions? Rachel, then Steve, then Michael.
Yeah, first a comment and a question. As you proceed with your construction selections and things like that, I know that the school districts up in Craig area had some real problems with their contractor after the fact. It was quite the scandal in the newspaper. The school oversight board, school state board, started really reviewing the work he'd done in other school districts, but they didn't do their foundation work right. And there was a lot of consternation with the Craig City Council and folks like that when the building had to be declared uninhabitable and things like that, and it was barely 2 years old. So, really keep an eye out for who that was and avoid that sort of problem and double check that. But I was going to ask, are there any kind of height restrictions that you're trying to give the design team going forward, acknowledging, of course, that a gym needs a higher height and things like that, but have you looked at any parameters to put around that to think about the visual impacts?
We really haven't gotten to that level of detail. So I know there are parameters in the master plan that we had approved, and I am not sitting an expert here before you to address some of those details. But that is the work that we will have our owner's rep definitely
That'll
go
be your
down
guiding
on.
document.
to try to help us figure out how do we stay within that. I know we care so much about having our structures really complement and be built into the landscape. So far, at least conceptually, we've only talked about a single story.
Okay.
And even digging where the new school is on that map. Oh, I've never done this before. This building. The grade, this is quite a hill it's up against, so it could really be built into the hillside quite a bit. So I'm sorry I can't answer that more specifically, but we certainly will be.
So if there were heights in the original master plan and you try to use those as a guidepost, I'm sure that'll,
Yeah, and I'd love to work with Suzanne on really understanding what those limitations are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Steve? I'm curious about the location, first of all, of the septic system. Where are
Okay.
you putting that in?
It's behind Rob's head.
Is it down below
It's down
the...
across the road. It's down in here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Clear down there.
And it'll all be below ground. It's leach fields. There'll be one small shed there that will house the mechanics for it. So it's not ponds and things like that. It's big underground, enormous underground tanks and leach fields.
Then the logistics of doing construction while you're using the campus.
Yeah.
Could you walk us through
I'd love to. I would
where,
love to. How it's
what
gonna
the
go.
steps of the construction are planned to be and where the students will be
Yes.
located during that time?
And I just have to say, I know this sounds so corny, but I love that when we did our master plan, there was a moment where we all stopped and went, hey, our campus is heart-shaped. So this is the drive that you come up. Right now, this driveway sweeps about like this into this space, which is our current parking lot. So you see that our plan swings this road out wider. That's because the grade is really intense on our driveway right now. So this allows us to lessen the grade of the driveway and make our driveway safer up above as well as the improvements that we made to the intersection. So it also allows us to move the parking out onto the edges of the campus. One of the big problems with our campus right now is that your first experience is traffic and little kids running around and getting out of cars, and it is unbelievably congested and not safe. Right now the bus comes in like this, parks around in here, and the kids walk up into the school. But it's haywire at the beginning and end of every day. So one of the things I personally love about this so much is the campus feel, the pedestrian safe way, the walkways, that we're really getting traffic out of the heart of the campus. So this right here is where the current school is. And the kids can continue to go to school completely in the school as it stands while the construction project's going on, which is fantastic. We're very happy we are not having to bring up modulars or relocate the school or anything like that. The way it'll work is this area is currently our soccer field. And so what we can do is bring construction traffic up, and this will be the staging area. So even the construction traffic's not even going to be on the campus. It's going to come up and around and above the campus. The first thing we have to do right here is where our current gym is located. So the first thing we need to do is take down the gym and clear this building area for the new main school. And by the way, this is pretty accurate in terms of square footage, the math of this footprint, but disregard the shape of it because, again, the design work hasn't been done. It's just a placeholder. This is a fantastic location for the main school building. Everybody agreed. It's south-facing exposure. It opens up to the most amazing views in the world, and it's just the right spot. We spent a lot of time thinking about that. The bones of the gym it's a steel beam structure, and we really want to reuse and repurpose as many of the buildings as we can on campus. So we think we can use a lot of that steel beam work in the new gym, which is actually a community hall. We're going to create a flexible space here that could be used for theater gatherings, as an auditorium, and a gym, so that that space is in much more constant and active use. Right now, the gym is not so much that way. So we'll move the gym. We'll start building the school. That's going to happen. That's scheduled to happen for April, this coming April. The owner's rep that we selected has actually accelerated our timeline. We were quite interested in their ideas. We're going to still drill down on that, but we had planned to be in that new school building fall 15. It looks like we'll probably be there January 15, so we'll have a winter semester in the school, which is pretty great. Whatever the case may be, and I've never jumped off a deep end of a pool like that before, so I'll keep you posted. But as soon as we move into this school building, we can remodel and repurpose the original school building here. So this drawing shows the original school building downsized from 8,000 square feet to about 3,000 square feet. That's going to become our performing arts building. You could imagine, if any of you have been up on our campus, that building is iconic to the community school. It's the original log building. It was Harry Teague's thesis project when he was at Yale. And it's got a big log tower on it. I mean, alumni walk up the drive and see the school and start crying. It means a lot to the community. So we really grappled with it because it's the state of Colorado, when they did our facility assessment, roughly estimated it would cost at least $8 million for us to bring that original building up to code. And we all went, oh, that doesn't sound like a good plan, a responsible use of money. And the state certainly didn't want anything to do with that old building. So that building is not included in our BEST grant funding. That's money that we will now be raising separately to preserve a portion of that building. We want to keep the tower. We want to keep the main central area when you walk into the school, which is the heart of the school, and a small configuration of classrooms in there that would be our music classrooms. So that work would begin. What I can't tell you is how things like all the landscaping and stuff weaves in. That's going to be a learning curve for me. But what I've just described is the bulk of the construction work that'll happen up there. This building here is was the original Wiley Community Arts Center when they were a project of Compass. Since they've spun off, that's been our music and performing arts building. We want to return that building to the visual arts classroom because that's what it was built for. It's a fantastic building. It needs a little bit of facelift. The HVAC system needs upgrading for the arts and the kinds of fumes they're dealing with, so we'll do that. This little building's the wood shop, and that's staying. That's there now. This is the preschool, which is there now. We have a fantasy of maybe adding an additional toddlers center to that school, but that's well down the road. That's not a part of our current plans. The only thing that'll change in this building is we'll remodel the top floor, which is where our administrative offices are now. That will become 2 of the 4 employee housing units that we need to provide. And then this building is the rooming house that also stands on the campus now, and that also is an internal remodel so that the downstairs will accommodate the administrative offices, meeting rooms and such, and the top floor will be 2 employee housing units. And the only thing that you guys might be interested, just briefly to know, there's a lot of water. That's a lot of pond. We're not necessarily interested in ponds for pond's sake, but they're part of our augmentation plan that legalizes our domestic water supply, our well. We need to increase the pond capacity that we have for our augmentation plan, and that's what this shows. We would much rather buy shares of Woody Creek if we can do that, in lieu of hundreds of thousands of dollars of earth moving and pond work. So that's there, that's a placeholder, but we're still trying to figure out if there's a workaround for that.
Fairly complete.
Well, it's pretty much what I've been eating and breathing.
Michael?
Sky, I applaud you and the program that you've done here. It's really remarkable. And, you know, it really augurs well for the future for the kids at the school. Most of our memos about how deficient the school is currently, so. And I also applaud you for the turnaround. I mean, that really was a very successful project. I watched it every day, and it seemed like a lot of work, but I'm so glad that the school bus can turn around and not be exposed out on that road now, so that's great. The one thing that I still am concerned about, and you know I've been concerned about it for a long time, is the traffic to the school.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in your demographics, you say that 30% of the people are from Picken County, 70% are from Garfield County.
It's actually getting close to 50-50 now, just so you...
Well, but in any case,
Yeah,
there's a lot of
yeah,
traffic
where
there.
there is.
And I think you should, you know, you set sort of building goals
Mm-hmm.
for energy efficient buildings and stuff. And quite frankly, that's all negated if you have people traveling in their individual cars. So I really think you need to make it a school goal of having a mass transit system to get the kids to school. Because I face that traffic almost every morning. And there is an enormous amount of traffic at 8,
I know.
and then starting around 2:30 or 2:45. And the road isn't really sufficient for that kind of traffic. It isn't sufficient for anyway, because there's so many blind spots on the road. It's an agricultural road, or was formerly an agricultural road, and it just wasn't designed for multiple SUVs coming up and down the valley there. So if you don't address it, I'll be really disappointed. And because it's a deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I'm concerned about is that I know you're improving the upper road, but the lower road needs guardrails.
We are working on the road.
And has always had guardrails. And so until there's guardrails all the way up, that road is deficient. So hopefully those two issues you'll address in some serious way.
Absolutely.
And change sort of the paradigm
The culture,
of
yeah.
people bringing one kid in their SUV to school.
I would like that too.
Yeah, I think, you know, you have to get the parents involved in it. Because the parents think, well, I'm driving up Valley, it's just as easy to drop them off. I'll just zip up to the school. But it impacts that neighborhood, it impacts, you know, Woody Creek, and unfavorably.
Yeah.
So somehow, and I don't know how you do it, a mass transportation system that reaches the school, that would really then complement your energy efficient buildings and have a responsible school going forward. So I hope you work on that, and I hope your board works on that.
I appreciate it, and I couldn't agree with you more. And I will absolutely bring that into our design conversations. And I care a lot about the environmental design and the impact that we have on the land, and modeling that correctly to our students, and transportation must be a part of that. I couldn't agree more. I do want to assure you we are working on the entire road, and we're working on that with our neighbors. We now have 2 neighbors up there, and it's their driveway too. But we are definitely going to be upgrading the entire driveway. To what fashion, I don't know. It could be $1 million drive if we're not careful. It's a long driveway. We could hemorrhage money into it. So we're kind of trying to figure out what's the balance there. But
Yeah, I mean,
but that is under
just not
attention.
cars, making sure that cars can't go over the edge
Right.
would be my preference.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Other questions, comments, concerns?
Well, I would just echo Michael's transportation comments. And, you know, this may deviate from what you were thinking, Michael, but sometimes it's not always just having a mass transit system. Sometimes it's linking, and we used to struggle with this with the city and the school district and never really got very far, but it was like, well, what if there's a bus waiting and those parents can drop their kids off at a point specific and take the bus the last 10 miles? Or what if you institute a carpool program where, if you're going to drop on your own, you really are encouraged to drop with 2 other people and create a carpool system in the first few weeks of school each year with the new parents. Or, sometimes school districts really institute a price barrier, a price disincentive, that if you're dropping your kid off every day, it's $100 a month charge. And this helps fund the ride share matching, because if you can even get 3 to a car carpooling, you can cut your traffic down by 2/3. And so, those are just ideas, and, there's a lot of expertise in the City of Aspen Transportation Department and the RAFTA planning, and I'm sure they'd be happy to sit down with you guys for an hour or two and give you some ideas and some of the concepts that might assist.
That's a great idea.
Michael?
Yeah, along with that, the county owns property, that can be used as staging areas for exchanging students and buses and everything. So the county, I think, would be perfectly willing to help you with that problem in terms of where they own land and what's possible. And so I think it would be done on a cooperative basis, because the county's not interested in having too much traffic on that road. I mean, just from a maintenance point of view.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and
Good luck.
good luck.
Thanks. Can we clarify next steps? Would we do that now, or will you and I do that elsewhere with P&Z?
I think we'll just work on that. I mean, I think BOCC is clear that that's the sort of the next step, or the primary step with the county. And I would assume, that we would basically come back to you with some updates along the way, just in terms of, I think, we've kind of gotten in the habit of doing that, just so, as you move forward, once you've got design work underway, we can do another work session like this where you can present where that is.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, my understanding of the exemption for public schools is that it is an option. It's not, you don't actually have to do it. And we've run into, conflicts with the school district because of housing in areas that we didn't think was appropriate for housing. But there's an enormous amount of expertise at the county level on building inspection and building codes and everything you need to know. This is not a county like a rural Colorado county that doesn't have a building department or doesn't have access to a building department. So there are resources here that you could use, and you should think about that, because having inspectors that can come on a daily basis prevents things like what Rachel was talking about. But that's optional, and I think you should talk to the building department and community development about that and what's your best options there.
Best outcomes. Good idea.
And as I understand it, and maybe Lance can jump in too, that I mean, I think the state could pass off the inspections to local.
Yeah, the local, right now, we're not certified by the state, but we could get certified to do school inspections. Right now, we don't have that status. I can't imagine it's difficult to get. And then our building department could undertake all of the plan review and inspections if they desire.
Yeah, and there have been other inspections by the state that haven't been successful at the school system. So I just think, given my experience with the building department, that you're better off dealing with our department than you are with a remote department who may or not be able to come and make inspections on the basis you want to get the project done.
We have a big initial work session next week with our owner's rep, so I'll definitely mention it. They'll know more about all of those options too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And congratulations again on your fundraising drive. And the community that supported you.
Yeah.
Great thanks go out to all.
Yeah, thank you. That was amazing.
Okay, let's see, we're a little ahead of schedule. If we take our break now, can we get the folks in for MOIs in about 15 minutes?
Lindsay just said she can come down now, so 15 would probably be fine too. And I'll get to Pat.
Would you guys like to take a 15-minute break now, or just do one of the MOIs first?
Let's do one of the, we're almost done with the day, right?
Is Lindsay ready to come down now? Or?
Large event is.
It's just an update. You know what's required.
Or we can
Five.
look at,
Yep, there we go.
Our
She's
time
here,
is-
let's do it.
The timing's good.
If you
okay.
guys ever want a fun field trip, you're always welcome up on the campus. I'd be happy to show you around.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to move ahead with our MOIs, at least one of them right now. And this is an update on the Roaring Fork Gorge master plan process, I'm assuming. And Lindsay Utter is here with Gary Tannenbaum from our Open Space and Trails staff.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, we wanted just to stop in and give an update on the process, and then at the end see if you guys were interested in doing a site tour at all in the summer yet. So we had 8 different open houses in June. Attendance varied, but we had about 55 people overall and got really great feedback and comment. If anyone's curious and seeing the maps that were drawn on during the open houses, they can go onto the website, and they're all posted on there. And you also have the opportunity to provide comment on them as well, and that's pitkinostprojects.com. We have about 100 online surveys that were filled out, or at least online comments. So we've been going through all of those and reading through everyone's feedback and organizing our thoughts and all of that. We have a meeting planned with the City of Aspen staff next week to kind of debrief on everything we've learned. We're still gathering some of the inventory data, but the goal is to have a draft plan in September, end of September, and then have 2 more months of public comment on that plan. We've had site visits I met with members from Challenge Aspen, staff from Challenge Aspen. We have a site visit with the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board next week, and then staff from the Roaring Fork Conservancy are going to participate on that site visit. Dale went out with the mayor of Aspen and did a site tour. So we are just right now, if anyone who's interested, planning site tours to kind of show everyone the properties and the different issues out there. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about the process or if you'd be interested.
I had one question. Were you having a wildlife consultant to do a wildlife inventory along with this, or is that something that we're doing in-house?
I can answer that. Yeah, we've done wildlife surveys in the past, and so on properties like Sky Mountain Park is really close by, and we did all those, some of them down by the river there, and so we're going to do mostly pick and pull all of that information. Plus, we have all the mapping from the Division of Wildlife for major game movements through the area and stuff. So we're going to put that all together, and so. In the management plan, we usually do call out action items if, we want to do stream inventories or stuff like that we learn through the process. Maybe the Healthy Rivers and Stream Board wants to, look at something else. But the basic wildlife review is mostly complete.
Okay, super. I just wanted to make sure that was going to give equal consideration to the human uses.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So, Lindsay, besides the upcoming Healthy Rivers and Streams tour, are there any other scheduled ones for the remainder of this summer?
Yeah, we're happy to take any group that wants to go out there. Right now, we're not scheduling specific public tours, but when the draft plan's released, at that time we'll have more open houses and public tours scheduled.
Yeah. I see that you're asking whether the BOCC would like to take a tour at some point, and maybe, at least for me, it might make sense to wait till the first draft comes out so we can really sort of get a better idea of how the plan may come together with the different facets of the trail.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Unless, I can't remember the timelines, unless that's going to push it into like December or October, or November into the snowy season?
No, I mean, right now our goal is to have the draft plan at the next joint meeting with our board, so that's September 17th. And then after that, we could schedule it.
Cool.
Okay, you, Michael?
Lindsay, were there any comments or any directions that surprised you about the gorge?
That's a good question. We got a lot of great feedback about Stein Park in general. I was surprised with how much public comment there was on the different parts of the park. In the gorge, we got, I would say the stuff for the fishermen was interesting, just mainly because they want to keep everything a secret. That's what they do down there. So
That was a surprise.
well, it was for me, it was. And so I see us doing more planning with them in the future on how they use the area.
So I was surprised to see that 20% was other on your respondents to your questionnaires here. And so there were a lot of people from out of town or from other places. So that was great.
And we did do one day out there with a table, actually on July 4th. So I think that day we had a lot more feedback from people who were there visiting and not necessarily the local residents. So.
Yeah, because everybody gets sort of invested, like you say, into their secret fishing holes or whatever. And it's interesting to see what the visitors think of it.
Well, what was interesting too is the rafting companies. So like some of the older people who've been rafting that section or kayaking that section, were kind of talking about the human barriers that the railroad has created for that overall gorge. And it was kind of cool to see their perspective on how the natural flow of the river, and we'll talk about this with Healthy Rivers and Streams and the Roaring Fork Conservancy when we go out to visit next week, is that people talked about that little pond by Slaughterhouse Falls and how, basically the railroad cut that off. I mean, obviously the river used to go into that side and around. So there's little things, and like, is Slaughterhouse Falls even a natural falls? And so a lot of that stuff there is kind of one of those things that was surprising to me, because, you look at the geology and, yeah, it was formed partially by the railroad, 100 years ago. And so we all think of it as natural now, and it might not all be that perfectly natural deal. So it was kind of cool to hear some perspective on it for people who've been on the river for, 40 years.
Rob?
It seems to me a lot of the comments that are on here, and I don't know how you reconcile all these comments together. It'd be a very hard process, but I love it the way it is. And here we are looking to do a master plan with potentially some major changes to it, or potentially not. But what's the process of taking these words into what the people want, and how do you reconcile that with the people that speak and the people that don't speak as well? I mean, obviously, if you don't speak, you don't have a say to some extent in various things, but it's just challenging prospect of what you've got for the next steps of this, because there's a tremendous amount of little comments in a lot of different directions, and a lot of them are in opposition to one another. I want a bike path so I can bike faster on that. I don't want bikes on it because I like to walk on it and I like it the way it is, and I would use it more if less of it was paved. Was one of the comments that I read. So it's really hard to reconcile. So I don't know what your plan is for that, if you could elaborate a little bit.
Well, I mean, we'll go through. I mean, there are a lot of places, especially on the maps, where a lot of people are in alignment. So we'll go through and pick out themes, and then, I mean, the trail itself is probably the most controversial as far as how that's handled. And I think in the draft plan, we're still going to have a couple alternatives, particularly for the last 2 miles. And then for different regional connections, there are different alternatives in there. But there is a lot that we can address as far as having things that aren't in conflict with everybody else, things that people have generally agreed upon. So yeah, but there are things that you kind of have to pick through and see, how many people actually wanted it, or if it's something we can even accomplish, stuff like that.
And that's going to be the biggest thing for you guys when we come back with the plan at the end, is that's going to be where you guys have to make a decision based on the comments and what you hear in the comment period when we have the draft plan released, because unlike the other plan, we might make recommendations where people agree, but we're not going to make recommendations where you kind of have that open kind of discussion and you'll have options. And so that's where you and the Open Space and Trails Board will have to work on, with the public coming in and commenting continually, is how to make those final decisions and how to phase these projects. And, that's why they pay you the big bucks. Because honestly, it's going to come down to you guys making a decision. We're going to try to give you everything in our power that we've received to help you make that decision and to make you more comfortable with making a decision. But in the end, the hardest part is going to be, it's not one of those projects like Gold Butte we just did, and we had, everyone agreed we want a climbing area. This one's a little different. We don't have that, so it's going to be some good questions and good time for the public to come out, and then we'll have to make some decisions and phase things. And I think in the end, that's how you do this master plan, is to try to do it over time and do it appropriately and see how the public reacts.
So we'll see the first draft of this plan at our next joint meeting with Open Space and Trails. And will that be the first time they would have seen that draft plan as well?
Yeah.
So we'll have that in a packet and we'll have a good discussion on that. So that's, the timing seems fairly good then.
Yeah, and you won't have to make decisions on it, because we'll have 2 months of more public comment. But we would love to get your comments from your initial view.
Just in general, yeah. Okay, thank you. Rachel?
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a follow-up on Rod's comment, because I believe you're absolutely right, pulling together as many solid consensus items and pros and cons of the points where there's disagreement, and then it comes back to Open Space and Trails and our board. But I just want to make sure, because we did a pretty extensive comment gathering on the trail itself as just a trail, whereas these comments are kind of more the larger land management planning document as well. And so will the comments made by just the trail users and doing the trail exercise be brought forward as well in some fashion?
Yeah, the answer to that would be yes. We'll definitely use what we did in the inventory as far as different options, but I do think that those can be massaged differently as far as what we've heard this time around as well. I wouldn't, as far as the results from last year in regards to the trail, the public comment, and then what we've heard this year, I think it's kind of the same percentage splits of what people are feeling. I think we can approach it differently with phasing and breaking the trail out separately, different sections of the trail separately than we had in the past.
And I appreciate that. I just, as I've read it more from the outside in the ads for the meetings and things like this, the other one really did seem to be focused on trail users, and this one is focused on overall and broader. And I just wanted to make sure that we weren't having people say, well, you disregarded all my comments from before and you redid it, and I didn't go to this one because I thought it was about the fisheries and the wildlife and not my trail that I'm interested in. So I just wanted to make sure we don't alienate anyone in the course of how we bring it all together.
All right, we'll look forward to that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
So if we take a 10-minute break now, we can get Pat and Jerry down here.
Yeah, I've let them know we're running early. I think
All right,
Pat's trying to find
let's
Jerry.
take a 10-minute break, grassroots.
Yeah, it's 2:34.
Okay. Continuing on to our memos of interest, and we're going to have an update on a wildlife mitigation outreach program. Jerry Peets and Pat Bingham.
Thank you. Wildfire. Not wildlife.
What did I say?
Wildlife.
Wildlife. Wildfire.
Okay. I'm not prepared to give an update on the wildlife, but I am prepared to tell you about what we've done regarding wildfire. As you may remember, back in April, we decided to start some really heavy outreach to the public about the possibility of having a dry summer. And based on our experience the year before, where we actually had a wildfire on April 6th of last year, we hit the ground running with our outreach. Since then, we've been running frequent print ads in the newspapers. I have them displayed here. We have 4 rotating ads. We're trying to, the original ads we did were to promote meetings, community meetings, to learn about the Ready, Set, Go process, which is a way to prepare yourselves, for homeowners to prepare themselves. We had a pretty good turnout at those meetings. They weren't massively attended, but we think we had a quality audience. We had property managers there. We had people who really wanted to know what they could do to be prepared in case of a wildfire. So we feel like those meetings were a success. And Jerry can speak more about those. We did a bunch of promotion in June of the meetings. Then starting after that, we started to promote in a more general way just wildfire awareness. And we thought if we used local firefighters that would bring it a little closer to home, instead of just using in-the-can generic messages that you sort of gloss over, the same message that's being used in California and the same message in Vermont. So we took local firefighters and kind of created an image with them. So anyway, the ads are displayed here. Then over the 4th of July, just to give it a little extra push, because it had been very dry leading up to the 4th of July, we blew up we didn't blow anything up. We enlarged one of our ads that talks about all the things to be thinking about during the 4th of July. We ran that in the papers, and then we put it up over the barbecue at the fire department in Aspen, where we thought we'd get a lot of eyeballs on that message. So when people went to get their free hamburger, they saw that ad. We also are cross-promoting to Pitkin Alert. We've been heavily promoting Pitkin Alert all summer, which is the alert system that citizens can sign up for online to receive information about wildfire or traffic and other things. We put big banners on the side of the fire trucks in the parade. We thought that would get a lot of eyeballs too, tourists and locals. We have a lot of films running on CGTV about wildfire. We have the Ready, Set, Go video, which is very informative. And we also got our hands on a wonderful short, I think it's like a 3-minute long video that a Colorado Springs firefighter made during the fire in Colorado Springs of them saving a house. And it is the most educational film about what you can do around a house to make it easier to save. It was amazing, and Jerry knows all about mitigation. I'd never seen anything like it. So we put that up on CGTV, and it's fascinating. Everything we do in local media and the newspaper, we also have a radio campaign going that uses the voices of these 4 firefighters. Same theme. So you have a headline, and then you have a quote. It's their voices with the theme. So we're hoping that will also make people feel closer to their local fire district between Aspen and Carbondale. So these guys are from Aspen, Snowmass Village, Basalt, and Carbondale. Everything we do in the local media, we also do in social media. So we've put everything on Facebook. We have a website called pitkinemergency.org. Anything new that happens, a press release or anything that's going on, all the materials that you see here, including this book in a digital format, are on that website. We also have it on our Pitkin County website on the home page, just wildfire preparedness. You can click on this and see this entire booklet online. We are thinking about, depending on how the summer goes, doing a meeting of wildfire experts in a format like this, where we have a panel and we televise it and people can ask questions of them and they can bring us up to date on fuels and moisture levels and things like that. Jerry and I are working on that. But my recommendation would be to have that meeting a little later on in the summer when, if it should get dry, or, just sort of strategically plan that meeting to give people even more information. So as far as outreach goes, that's what we've been doing. And Jerry's here to talk about his mitigation.
If there are any questions for Pat on outreach?
Sounds great.
Yeah, thank you, Pat.
Yeah, for as long as I've been a member of the incident management team, I think this is probably the most aggressive campaign that Pitkin County's ever done in terms of wildfire awareness. So they did a great job and are continuing to do it. Just to give you an update on mitigation efforts around Pitkin County, and I'll kind of go item by item. I've been involved somewhat with the city. They have an effort going now with the residents on McSkimming and Mountain Valley to connect some egress roads. So that's kind of a work in progress. They had a meeting last week that I was not involved in, but there's another one tomorrow. And then doing a presentation with those residents regarding, basically the ready, set, go type information. I was forwarded a letter from the Shieldo Terrace Homeowners Association, and Steve had got that. And I don't know if everybody else had a chance.
It went to all of us.
It went to all of you, okay. So you got to read that. What I've done since then, it just so happened that Doug Paul, the BLM's wildfire mitigation specialist, was going to be up in the next couple of days. So I took him on a tour over Prince Creek and all around up Snowmass and up to the Shieldo Terrace. So we spent about an hour and a half up there looking that area over just to get his ideas and bounce some things off each other. I called next week and met with the HOA president, Dave Nixa, and Eric Hansen, and also Mike Thomas from the Wildcat Ranch, and we discussed their concerns up there in Shieldo. And we're going to, I guess if the board is supportive of moving forward, and addressing their concerns, I mean, what they're asking for mostly is an evacuation plan. And some parts of it have to do with Snowmass Creek Road, which, I really don't think are feasible at this time. I think they need to concentrate more on sheltering in place. They've got some safe zones they can establish up above, up on top, and just working on their own roads and properties is really, I think, the direction they need to go. So I've created kind of a rough outline for them, and this would apply to pretty much all the subdivisions I've visited because they're basically the same: narrow roads, really dense vegetation up next to the roads, just kind of a nightmare scenario in an evacuation process. So I don't know exactly, if I could just go for this on my own or if I need direction from the board or the county manager on this.
Yeah, it was interesting because this is really a new program for us to reach out to homeowners association and identify certain areas of the county. And I know that when we started this program and you came on, Jerry, with your suggestions, I think, and input, you identified 3 or 4 areas to focus on. And obviously there's many more areas within the county that need help. And I think perhaps just because of all the work you've done, Pat, as well, it's really raised the awareness, which is great, to homeowners associations, so they need to be concerned about this. So I guess it's more of a question of resources for you to add this to your list in terms of time and money and what that really means. I think you'd have to let us know that.
Okay. It's definitely doable, putting together some sort of plan for them. I've done this before. Time frame wise, to actually, implement something like this, you may be talking into next spring. To really, get some sort of results out of something like this. It's not something that's going to be done in a month. There's 19 homes up there. There's a lot of, there's a lot of setup to get something like this going. I've contacted the BLM, the State Forest Service, and the U.S. Forest Service, and these are guys I've worked with before. and I've got their support. Again, they're excited to come up and work in Pitkin County. They haven't done a whole lot up here, but you know, they think that you know, this position will allow them a contact instead of just, you know, getting called once in a while from homeowners associations or residents. So I've got them on board with it. The other thing I have going on, there's 3 more presentations.
Hold on for 1 second, we're on this one topic.
Okay.
We want to resolve that. Michael, you got your hand up.
Well, I mean, my feeling about the neighborhood should develop their own evacuation plans. It does a number of things. First of all, they know their neighborhood better than an outsider does. It also builds neighborhood cooperation, which in the case of subdivisions you don't often get. And so with Jerry's help, I'd support that. But really, I think it has to, I don't want to be a government that says, this is the plan you must follow. I want them to develop plans on their own and have them reviewed perhaps by an expert or a number of experts. But that would help me be comfortable with this and would be positive all the way around for the community, for them to take responsibility for their own evacuation plans.
Is that what you're currently doing? For example, Red Mountain was identified. Is that pretty much the process you're going through with the homeowners association as Michael has suggested, or is it a different process?
Well, it would be basically the same process. And I do have a meeting with them on the 25th, the Ridge of Red Mountain Homeowners Association. Just to kind of get a feel for where, you know, where they're at on this whole fire danger thing. I'm, you know, not real sure what their take on it is, but they're interested in meeting, and Parker Lathrop from Aspen Fire is going to be there, and Susan Pearson from zoning.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Rachel?
Yeah, just to stay on the topic, I really support what Michael has said, and I think that it is a matter of making sure that the appropriate resources are there for the group, as you've discussed, but for us to be more in a convener role, and it's very much a model similar to what my boyfriend does with Colorado Rural Water Association, where they pull communities together to develop a source water protection plan, but they don't really do it for them. Maybe a little more than you might like, they do it for them, but it's always checking back in and checking back in with the liaison, so people have that sense of ownership of the plan later on. So I fully support that. But I guess back to the letter itself and the issues that are out there, is there a suggestion that we should begin a more aggressive vegetation removal program from county easements? I mean, is that what the homeowners are really asking for? And, you know, would it be the recommendation of some of these other fire experts? And do we need to start, you know, budgeting for that a little bit, you know, this area this year and this area this year and this area this year? I can imagine there'd be a lot of sensitivity, people saying, yes, do that, protect us from wildfire, and then you go in and you start removing trees and brush and they say, what are you doing to my rural road? But it does strike me that that's accurate. And I've heard similar comments related to Colorado Department of Transportation, whereas they used to clear more brush off the side of their roads, and then with budget cutbacks, it's become closer and closer to the main line. And whereas a lot of communities always have looked at these roads as being a potential fire break, it's not really the case anymore, and it's a little more almost of a fire corridor with high grasses and stuff. So I think that that's something we're all going to need to work on a little more and take a hard look at. That's, you know, I'd rather prevent the fire than the evacuation plan. And yeah, I mean, you need both, but what I'm saying is rather than have to deploy the evacuation plan because there's no other way to get out of those roads.
So I guess what I'm hearing is we should be working with the Shield Homeowners Association to help them in terms of working out an evacuation plan, and then in terms of looking at other mitigation, in terms of resources and budget, I think you can make some suggestions that needs to come back to staff and the county manager as we start looking at our budget for the next year or so. Rob?
A lot of homeowners associations with people that don't live here too are not around or don't have extra time to do stuff. And my fear is, and I'm not saying that this is going to be the outcome, but my fear is that the members of the HOAs end up pointing fingers, why don't you do it, why don't you do it, and it doesn't get done. And that just might be the end result here with you as a facilitator as opposed to a, being more involved with the project. And I agree with what Michael and Rachel are saying, that for the buy-in, it has to be their plan. But I'm not so sure, I guess I'm reflecting on my HOA, sorry guys. Stuff just doesn't get done.
Well, I mean, you're never going to get 100%, but if there's a core group of people who are interested to work on that, and then they can communicate to others, and you just have to move forward. Yeah. Michael and Steve?
The common thing that unites them is everybody cares about their property. Everybody cares about the loss of their property. Everybody cares about the loss of their life. So, if they can't get it together over that, they're never going to get it together. You just have to give them the opportunity. And this is a different issue from what color should we have our roof, or what should our front doors look like. This is a real fundamental issue, and it's an opportunity for them to come together on that issue and then address those other issues that are secondary, not as important as this, which is the protection of health and property.
Steve?
Just to let you know, Jerry will be speaking at the Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus this coming Monday evening. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know exactly what they have you lined up to talk about, Ready, Set, Go, or talking specifically about evacuation plans and whatnot. But I'm really concerned about Gateway Mesa, which doesn't have any other ways out or any good ways they could drive through the BLM land for miles, but that's probably where a fire, or likely a fire, would be coming from that direction. On Shield O, at least they do have some dead-end roads up there, but then they also have the other subdivision. They can get back down to Snowmass Creek Road. But if we look at the big picture, part of our responsibility would be to make sure that the Snowmass Divide Road is very passable for people if they have to evacuate up Snowmass Creek and get over to Snowmass Village. That could save more lives than if we sent out a brushing crew for weeks removing brush all the way down Snowmass Creek Road, because it all depends on where a fire is and what direction people have to go. And just the fact that they came forward and they're aware, they're thinking about this, that's awesome. That, thinking about what are they going to do if there is a fire and what can they do to prevent it in the first place or to lessen the danger from it. So it's a good problem we have in working with them, for sure.
Yeah, they definitely have more options than a lot of subdivisions. There's Ziegler, there's Wildcat Ranch, the Divide Road, even the Monastery Cutoff.
Monastery Cutoff, even,
off the backside. So, and then the safe zones that could be established right up on top. So anyway,
So you got some direction on
I
that
guess
one?
I have some direction with that.
Okay. All right. We'll let you continue your...
The only other thing I wanted to mention was that I do have the caucus, Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus meeting on the 22nd, and then the Ridge of Red Mountain on the 25th, and there's another Starwood one on August 13th. So just kind of plug away and see, where these homeowners are at. I have no idea for their feelings about wildfire, whether it's raining now they don't care, or they still want to pursue, get some action done.
So are you making a concerted effort in terms of going around to the different caucuses just to provide information, or are you just looking at specific caucus areas?
These are ones that have approached me.
Okay, because I think the Frying Pan Caucus might be interested in. They only meet in the summer. They only have one more meeting, which is the second Monday of the month in August. So I can give you an address for their chair, because I think he'd be interested in having you on their agenda next month.
Yeah, I've spoke to them before.
You spoke to Dale, so have you got Dale Combs?
Oh, is it Dale? Okay.
Have you got his email?
I can get it.
Get it from me, and
Okay.
shoot him an email and see if there's an interest. I'm sure there will be to get up there, because there's another area in the middle of the White River National Forest, surrounded by trees and wood. Okay, Rachel?
Yeah, just as a comment, really appreciate your work, and really you as well, Pat, you know, that we're right on top of this as a new issue that we're really addressing, and, you know, going to have to address it on an ongoing basis. I mean, you can have wildfires even when you have a, quote, relatively wet summer. You know, there's still a lot of fuel out there. And I just kind of want to emphasize that when I went to Flagstaff, Arizona with Northwest Council, Western Interstate Region, they had a great presentation, and it was really more about the recovery work that they've had to do and the massive amounts of money they've had to spend. And people don't really think about that, but the soils which become hydrophobic, and then you have some of these torrential rainfalls, and you know, we've already seen flooding over in the Black Canyon area again. As an outcome of the newest fire in Colorado Springs, there's continued flooding from Waldo Canyon, and the amount of destruction to people's homes and lives can be almost worse after the wildfire for several seasons than it is beforehand. And so, you know, it's a multifaceted program, and, you know, it's always prevention, and it's emergency rescue and response, and then eventually it's restore and remediation. And so the avoided costs of spending this sort of money up front and avoiding these problems is more than, you know, penny spent, a pound saved. I mean, it is just massive amount of at-risk property values from the flooding that's the aftermath of these events.
Okay. Anything else you want to share with us?
If you wanted an update on the fire danger,
sure.
I could give you that real quick. I got a little bit yesterday. It's moderated due to the monsoonal flows we've had last couple of weeks of rains. The fuel moistures in the shrubs and grasses is about average, which is not even close to where it was last year. So they're still green, but the fuel moistures remain low in larger diameter trees and standing dead. So what my take was on this is, you know, spring, we had a late spring, and things are still green. We've got some rain, it's keeping things green, but eventually, you know, those lighter fuels are going to cure unless we just have continued moisture. But any period of hot, dry, windy weather will probably take us right back to where we were in June. So that's kind of where we're at now.
Okay, well, thanks for the update.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are these all local firefighters in the
Yeah.
pictures?
Yeah.
This is, you know, Steve Howard, you guys recognize?
My next door neighbor.
Steve Howard, he works for the ski company. And oh yeah, I know a little story about him
I
in
know
your
a
place.
few more
Uh-huh.
stories about.
He wasn't he fire chief down in Basalt, and he's on the Aspen Fire Department. And then this is
He's still on Basalt.
this is Dean Perkins. He's from Carbondale, and he actually went to Colorado Springs and helped fight the Black Forest fire. And he said it was a humbling experience that for the first time they kept the firefighters around after the fire was over, and they usually just leave apparently. And he said it was an amazing experience to be able to stay there and have contact with the homeowners, who either some lost their homes and some homes were saved. This is Jason Hutter from the Snowmass Wildcat Fire Department, and he's a firefighter, and he does the Baja 1000 in his truck. And this is Annie Gonzalez. She's a bike racer extraordinaire from Aspen and a ski patroller on Aspen Mountain, and also a volunteer firefighter for a long time. So we feel that by bringing the real people into these messages, that it helps the community to know who their firefighters are, feel a part of it, feel that sense of responsibility, feel that these are part of the community too. These are your people. And the only way we have to help them to do their jobs. If we mitigate, then when they
are out trying to fight a fire on Red Mountain and they come to a well-mitigated home, the chances of them saving it are a lot better. So
Yeah.
that was the idea behind it.
Good, thank you.
Pat, I really think those ads are so good, you should submit them for some sort of Clio award or something like that. I mean, I'm serious. Those are some of the best ads I've seen public produce in a long time.
Thank you. We have a good time coming up with them. All right.
Okay, we're going to go on to our open discussion. Phyllis?
For me, I don't have anything, but we asked GR to be here for an update on the underpass, and I see a map for the AABC, so I'm guessing you're doing that too.
Okay, great.
You have lots of chairs.
I put a map of the ABC, or plan sheet from our plans, behind Rob, just so we had a visual that I could talk off of. We've been under construction in the ABC for a little over a month now, and we've made some good progress where we can. However, we're running into a couple of roadblocks with utility conflicts that we have. The contractor wisely decided to give some context. State Highway 82 would be just off of this map down here, and the Roaring Fork River would be just off the map on the top side. The pond is located just down here. The contractor elected to start laying pipe up from the river to the pond, and then we were making the connections when Aspen Consolidated Sanitation District is replacing a sewer line and several other lines to their facility because they anticipated that that would need to be done in the next several years, so we asked them to get that done. However, their contracting and design took much longer than what we had anticipated initially. So while we asked them to be completed by the middle of this month, it looks like they won't be completed until the middle of next month with their replacements. And I'll get back to what that impact is now. But we have pulled off from constructing the pond area right now to allow Aspen Consolidated Sanitation District to work past us, or their contractor rather. And we have begun to install the stormwater appurtenances, the inlets and the pipes up on the road around the Baltic Avenue and the 400 road intersection, which is its own web of utilities. We have 3 sewer lines, 4 water, either water mains or services to dig around, and a myriad of gas lines and electric lines and telephone and cable. We decided to try to go for a bullseye with our stormwater system. It's the only place it would fit in. And so we've made our way across the road here, which actually took 2 whole days to dig and place pipe and move utilities, or ensure that we didn't have to move utilities. And we're going to move our way up towards Highway 82 from the back of the ABC with the stormwater to allow the contractors that are back and performing work for the Aspen Consolidated Sanitation District to move forward. We have another project going on utility-wise back on the 200 road now, which was kind of the first stage of utility moves necessary. And the Holy Cross Yard is back here. And because we needed to lower this curve here, we needed to replace a few of the electric lines. And so the Aspen Water also wanted to get a new reuse line to the golf course and up and over, basically goes from the sanitation district down here all the way up and over and around Deer Hill to the golf course eventually. So we had everybody partner, and they're doing their project back on this stretch of the 200 road right now. They've been delayed a little bit, but we anticipated some delay in their project, and we have enough of a buffer there that it shouldn't have any impact on our operations. The big thing for ACSD is that they have to come all the way up this hill through this alleyway. They're going to come across all of these parking lots here, and their existing line goes directly up the center of the 200 road. They want to replace this entire thing this summer so that we don't have to rip out the road in 3 to 5 years and when it was due for capital replacement for them. So unfortunately, I think that we do have a small liability at this point that we're identifying of the potential that the 200 road doesn't get done with the remainder of the ABC. We're working with everybody to try to expedite every construction activity that we can. I don't see as much of a problem with the remainder of the ABC, with all of the other challenges that we have in construction. It's all about timing and how this work goes through that section. The good news for them is that they're not going to be hopefully wrangling with the amount of rocks that we are, because they shouldn't be digging in as much virgin soils. But I have varying feelings about that sometimes, because we planned on, our contractor planned on a certain amount of production. And we have a stipulation in our contract that says if you're removing a rock that's so big, that's not what you're anticipating. So we pay you separate for that type of rock, because production rates are way different. We've moved more rocks than I ever would have assumed for the entire project between the pond and this intersection. I venture to say probably 80% of the material that we moved out of this intersection to put our pipes was rocks that are over 1 cubic yard. 1 cubic yard is 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. So while progress up here is actually going fairly well, all things considered, I don't think that we're going to be too far delayed. I do have some concerns on Aspen Consolidated Sanitation's work ahead of us. It's still the right thing to do. I guess that's the big message that I would like to send. It's really still the right thing to do. Have them go in front. We don't want to see our investment, torn up in a couple years, and then it's going to be much bigger expense for them to replace it then. So that's where we're moving with the ABC project.
So GR, have you gotten any feedback, either positive or negative, in terms of what you just said, and certainly the businesses along the 200 road? And then my other question is, how will that delaying this part of this work, how will that impact your budget?
That's good questions, George. We are just identifying some of our liabilities for delaying that 200 road construction, and that's something that it's probably going to take us a month to sort of monitor where ACSD is with their work to see when our actual start time for this work is going to be, before we know whether we're going to need to kick over to next year or if it's just going to be, what we can get done. There's a lot of variables there that we can't predict yet. As far as feedback, we've gotten a decent amount of feedback in that there, rightfully so, is probably going to be some frustration along the 200 road because of the fact that we have basically 3 projects going through there in 1 year. But it's all the old conundrum of, do you do it all in 1 year and have one large, a little bit longer impact, or are you the folks that are there every year for 3 years to try to get all of this stuff done? We have been working pretty well with all of the HOAs here. I don't know if the board remembers all of the parking that's along the Alpine Grove condos, all of the Pick and Park, the 3 Pick and Park Place HOA, all their condos, and up and down through here. It's all within the county right away, and so we've had to work very, very closely with all the condo owners and some of the business owners there to say, you're gonna park across the street today, and we're gonna dig up your part of the lot to put in the storm sewer, and that's all ongoing. We've gotten really good feedback from our almost weekly email updates. We've got a pretty healthy list. It's about 112 people that receive the email, and from the replies that I get back, a lot of them go to someone at a desk in, say, SKICO, and they forward it on to anybody who's in that building. So that's been going fairly well.
Any questions for GR on this part? Rachel?
Just to understand, after the below grade work is all done Is that when kind of the resurfacing of the road and any sidewalk improvements would be happening?
Yes, as we're working, essentially the contractor is starting from this corner of the project and then going to move that way. We're moving up towards 82 here, and as we're moving up, they're prepping for sidewalks where they're going to go in as they're digging for the pipe and they're on that section of road.
And so you're anticipating being able to do that by before the snow flies?
Absolutely. Yeah, that part of the work's actually going very, very well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
And the other major project that we have out in this area is the pedestrian crossing. And I know a couple board members have heard some updates at the RAFTA board meetings, but I felt, and also from the quarterly or annual meeting that you guys have with CDOT, we are, the story hasn't changed too much other than we're still about 3 to 4 weeks behind in general. We have started making some significant steps forward in the project. They did pour the floor of the concrete box last week. They're going to be forming for the walls of that for that first half on the airport side of the highway. You also start seeing them forming up all of the walls to hold up Airport Road and on the highway side. All those activities are going to be starting this week and next week. So we're going to be, there's a lot of things that happen on a construction project like that are hard to monitor just by driving by. But there's going to be a lot more things that you'll be able to see there just on your casual drive-by, I guess the best way to put it. Speaking of being behind what our anticipated schedule was to begin, this contract, which is being administered by RAFTA, does have a number of protections in it. We have a number of milestones, and there's all sorts of different liquidated damages associated to those milestones. And so the contractor understands that they have every, they have a large disincentive to be behind those milestones. Those are tied to our traffic switch and some utility things, and then also having fully functioning stations before Thanksgiving for the BRT project and things like that. We are seeing kind of the next gear from the contractor. We're getting all of our submittals in now. I think we've got 75 this week. And all those things are starting to pick up. I think we're in a position where we're behind. We're at a point where we're still very recoverable as far as a project to end up hitting those milestones, or if we're not hitting them, we're not going to be too far behind them, and things are going to get done.
Questions on that? Rachel and Rob?
Yeah, thank you for the update on that, GR. And I know you got a lot going on this summer, just like last summer. But how is it going, do you feel, in terms of the traffic and safety? Because I just have noticed myself, I think people are kind of barely slowing down for that dog leg that we got for the construction. And usually it seems when I go across all the other state construction sites, I see state patrols parked out there kind of regularly to remind people to really slow down in the construction zone and ticketing people. And are we getting any of that sort of assistance with the state? Or, I mean, just kind of general, how is the safety going? Because those little orange ballards scare the heck out of me with the separation of the lanes.
Those are good comments and a good question, Rachel. We have had an increased patrol actually from the sheriff's office. They have been going through the construction site a couple of times a day, and it's absolutely when you see the best compliance with the reduced speed limit through there. I feel that people are slowing down, maybe not as much as we always hope, but there's been we haven't had any accidents going through the area. Yes, and we can probably request from Colorado State Patrol to get some uniform traffic control, meaning having a car on site maybe a few times. That's usually the best way to slow people down is the threat of enforcement. So.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that's considered either by RAFTA or you, whoever's doing it, but it just is something that makes me slow down when I see the flashing lights outside the twin tunnels where they're rebuilding, and makes everyone else slow down too, and I think that's important.
Rob?
Just to kind of reiterate something that I heard from you, at first I had heard that they were about 3 weeks behind, but now you're saying that you think they're going to be caught up by Thanksgiving and meet their deadlines?
I'm saying it's possible.
Okay. And then the second thing that I'm not sure where I heard this, but I heard that the penalty was $300 a day for them if they're beyond their thing, and that seemed...
I thought it was
I don't know if that was
200 or
if
something.
that was true or not, but it seemed incredibly low for a $5 million project.
I don't remember the details of the contract, but usually on a contract that size, the liquidated damage per day is closer to the tune of $3,000 to $3,500 a day. But Rob, I haven't looked at that contract in several months, so.
I thought that was mentioned at the CDOT meeting not long ago. Somebody said that they had, I thought it was around 3,000 is what I thought I heard. But
I could have heard wrong or something.
At 3,000 would make sense for a contract of that magnitude. It's usually, there's a scale and a number of the different contract administration books and that's.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that it seems to me, because I also heard that we're going to a Saturday schedule now. They're going to be doing some construction on Saturday.
Yes.
$3,000 a day barely pays for the overtime for a lot of those employees working on a weekend. So $3,000 a day is nothing if you're going to, making the decision of going to a Saturday to catch up and pay overtime for, those types of construction workers to, anyway, just I don't understand it. But I thought I'd ask because people were asking me.
Rob, next time you're at Public Works, why don't you stop in? We can go over some construction economics.
Contract like that, I'm sure. See if we can find it in there.
Did I see your hand up, Steve, or are you all set? All right, well, thanks, GR, for the update.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks. Okay, other open discussion?
I don't have any.
I have one just from our earlier interviews with the Healthy Community Grant Committee. Michael posed the question, do we have the ability to add alternates to that committee? We can't add regulars, but we can add alternates.
The Home Rule Charter says that citizen boards will have 5 members unless they're initiating legislation identified what that makeup would be, and up to 5 alternates. So you certainly can add an alternate using one of your youth members then.
Okay, Rob?
And my question that I didn't want to ask at the time because it was more of an interview than a discussion, as you pointed out. Is there a way that we could potentially split their participation? Someone's an alternate for some of the time, because I think both of them are fabulous candidates, and I think they both get a tremendous amount out of it. Maybe one's an alternate this year and the other one's an alternate next year, if they're both juniors, because I don't know how to choose between the two of them.
Well, we have the ability to do one as a regular and one as an alternate.
Yeah.
Because we have the ability to add 5 alternates. So we could appoint both of them, one as a regular, one as the alternate. And because this particular committee is such a short defined period, they're just going to, it's one task for them to do, and then they're done with it. Michael?
Yeah, I think we do that and just suggest or have Mitzi suggest to the young ladies to work together on it and essentially have one submittal for recommendation. So they both get a sense of contributing to the grant committee.
Rachel?
Yeah, I like that idea, Michael. I think that one regular and one alternate now, and then just see where it lands next year, because you never know if they'll both have time to serve next year, without worrying too far about it. And, we're incredibly fortunate, as Mitzi said, to have a bunch of riches this year of people who can apply and have great skills to bring. I would suggest that Isabel Wolfer, as the longer-standing community member, kind of born and raised here, would make the good regular, and then the other young lady as the alternate, who's newer to the community and learning. And then, naturally an alternate gets to vote whenever the regular doesn't or isn't there, during those evening meetings. If something should come up, that's the whole purpose of an alternate. And an alternate can always participate in all the conversations, just not have a vote if there's a regular quorum of the regular members. And so I think it's a small group and always very respectful and inclusive of all their members. So I don't think they'll see any, kind of power shifts there. And, I think that would be the way to proceed. But I really like Michael's idea that Mitzi talked to them and maybe they, between themselves, go through that same process on their scoring and talk about it and learn from each other in that process and make it very collaborative.
I think it's a good idea. Steve?
If one of them is an alternate, then they would fill in if any of the other members
That's
are,
right.
are not present. So it could be the two high school girls potentially voting if one of the adult members isn't there at the same time.
Yeah.
But what a great problem to have two young people wanting to participate in a democratic process we have. That just is wonderful.
So we have a suggestion then from Rachel to appoint Isabel as the regular and Julie as the alternate, and using Michael's suggestion, have them work together collaboratively.
And then initial scoring if they
Initial
could.
scoring. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On a different subject, same
Yes.
appointments. I asked Lee directly, Lee McCulhey, whether he could actually participate in the citizens, senior citizens committee. I don't think he can, and therefore I can't support him. I mean, I think once he irons out his conflicts with the ski company and gets the restraining order dropped, well, then maybe he can be a productive member of but he can't be both, it seems to me. And that's just unfortunate, but it's the way it works.
Other thoughts?
I would agree with Michael in that I don't want to see the senior council become a launching platform for other interests or to see them dragged into other issues. And it just seemed that the applicant represented kind of a tangential relationship to everything with everything he answered. And so I find that that's unfortunate. But I don't think that's the right fit.
Yeah, I could go along with that. I think it's great that Lee wants to participate. He can still participate in Meals on Wheels or something like that, but I think we should respectfully thank him and ask him to get squared away with his legal problems with the ski company before participating.
In the Aspen Institute and the Aspen Museum.
Yeah, I guess I don't really understand the problems other than the fact that he was a defiance through disobedience type of person on various things, and a lot of people are, and it seems like he's already volunteering at the senior center with the Meals on Wheels program. I can't vote against him because I guess I don't have all the information. I don't see it as that he's done any, he hasn't been arrested for anything. He has a restraining order against him, but restraining orders can be put on people for a lot of various reasons.
Yeah, as I said, to me, it's more about not bringing controversy to the senior center, the seniors board, and not, enmeshing them in that somehow.
And I think the nature of part of what we do is controversy with different opinions.
All right, but I think we've got the majority of the board thanking Lee for his application, but it doesn't seem to be a right fit at the time.
George, while you're getting a few of these appointments done, I don't have my packet from last week's interview with the fellow who wanted to be on the election commission, and you asked him which was his druthers between the two, and it was the election commission. I thought he would be a great fit for the election commission, and I know that as the clerk's office continues to prep up for this and upcoming elections, they may need them sooner than later. So I'm wondering if the board would like to go ahead and move forward and appoint him to the election commission as well in that same resolution.
We have another interview next week.
Well,
But there's more openings.
We have 2 openings, right?
well, we've got two who are up to, their terms are up and they're both reapplying.
Well, I wasn't talking about the Healthy Rivers and Streams.
No, yeah, but that was the other one, so, oh, do we have another interview for the elections committee? Is that what you asked for,
we do.
Rob? Oh, we do?
Oh, okay.
I thought
didn't
I
know.
saw elections committee on our future agendas.
I thought.
Yeah, Roger Nicholson, I think, is next week.
Oh, okay, so then we should wait.
Yeah, unless there's more than one opening, but.
Yeah, okay, so
Okay,
we'll wait
look
on
at
that.
We'll wait on that one.
Okay, anybody else have anything for open discussion? Seeing none, I think we can adjourn for the day.
Very good.
Thank you, Grassroots.
Thank you.